God damn it, get over this guy. No. Oh yeah. What do I want to listen to, boys and girls? Uh, huh.
How is that possible? How is that possible?
She was bad.
How is that possible?
Things people do for fucking views, huh? Hmm.
on a bitch and you my mama age. I'm doing great, I'm getting paid, so why would I complain?
She gets loud, huh? Alright, I don't know what I want to watch, y'all.
Hopefully by now you've seen our video on how to use your CC to set up kills, but you might be wondering, wait, when should I be using it to peel for my team? We have answers to all your questions because today's video is all about peeling. We will be breaking down the two most effective forms of peeling in Arena, starting with the basics and moving into intermediate and advanced strategies. You're probably familiar with one of these, but the others you might not know about. And if you are waiting to learn how to peel like a pro, stick around as we show you how to keep your team alive in Arena. But what if you have no idea when you're supposed to peel? With 32 specs in WoW and hundreds of different spells and buffs, it's no small feat to know what every class can do. Well, what if I told you there was a course that teaches you everything you need to know about countering every class in WoW? Sounds too good to be true, right? Oh, what's that?
I was tripping.
Knowing your enemy, learn to counter every class. How to counter arms warriors, fire mages, disc priests, shadow priests. Oh wow, it just keeps going. I guess it's not too good to be true, and it looks like we've got you covered over at skillcap.com/wow. We're also so confident in your results that we offer a money-back guarantee if you don't see the rating gains you were expecting. Now, with prices as low as $4.99 a month, you have nothing to lose. So if you want to elevate your gameplay, check out SkillCap today. If you wanted to control how much damage your team is taking, you would press your CC, right? I mean, control is right there in the name, but peeling with control requires a bit of nuance. One of the things we stress in our guide on CCing to kill is that you should try to cross CC on your setups while also carefully monitoring DRs. This seems to create a paradox. How are you expected to both CC enemy players for damage while also saving DRs to peel? In the majority of cases, healers will not be the kill target in Arena. Most of the time, it is a DPS player that will be attacked. That means that most of the setup-based CC will be put on healers while trying to kill DPS targets. This is where classes with spammable CC have a bit of an advantage. Mages, warlocks, and druids can be a bit more flexible with their DRs on DPS since they aren't restricted by long cooldowns on CC spells. Spells like Polymorph, Fear, and Cyclone can be freely cast on DPS as a way to survive in between kill setups. Keep in mind that most healers have an 8-second cooldown on their magic dispel. Disc priests can get 2 charges on their Purify with a PvP talent, and paladins and Mistweaver monks have their own unique dispelling effects that are separate from their normal 8-second CD dispel. What this means is that throwing spammable CC into off targets, and sometimes even the kill target, is often really effective at reducing damage taken on your team, especially in the downtime between setups. Remember that Arena is like a series of waves. You have moments where you peak on offense, but these are followed by downtimes where you go into recovery mode. This is where you should be more defensive and use your peeling options. Ideally, you should be peeling as a way to deflect enemy attacks. This usually happens when one or more of the following conditions are met. 1. The enemy team is using cooldowns. 2. Your healer is controlled. 3. Your team is out of defensive cooldowns. 4. Your team is out of mana. If one or more of these conditions are met, it's usually a good time to deflect damage on your team. In any case, peeling with CC is usually just a way to delay the enemy team's pressure long enough for your offensive cooldowns and kill setup to be ready again. Spammable CC is insanely good for peeling, and it will make sense here in just a moment. As you can see, cooldowns have been committed by both the Ret Paladin and the Warrior, meaning we will need to stop damage as soon as possible. Our priest wastes no time and immediately casts mind control on the paladin while our mage frost novas the warrior and runs off the bridge. This will force the enemy melee to be in a really bad position if they decide to chase. Our druid will shut down more of the warrior's avatar with a cyclone while our mage baits the ret paladin downstairs. Once again, this will force the enemy druid to be in the center of the map and more vulnerable to CC if he wants to dispel or heal his partners. After our mage gets gripped up, he immediately resumes control over the paladin, shutting down even more of the avenging wrath with a polymorph. Even though this will all be dispelled, the ret paladin has to now walk all the way up the bridge, only to be CC'd even more with another half-duration polymorph. And at this point, the majority of the melee cleave's offensive cooldowns have been mitigated entirely, forcing them to now face the pressure of our god comp while they wait for CDs to rotate back. Okay, but what if your team doesn't have spammable CC? Does this mean you can never peel with your control since you need it for kill setups? No, not at all. Even classes without spammable CC will sometimes need to use their control defensively. This is especially true in really volatile matchups against bursty comps like RMP and any team with a Ret Paladin or Windwalker Monk. In these matchups, you will likely need to trade some CC into their kill setups, even if this means using the spells that you would normally use to set up your own kills. Peeling Rogue Mage openers is insanely important since this is the moment where they build most of their momentum. Here, our warrior immediately uses disarm on the rogue while both of our partners are stuck in CC. This isn't enough though, since the mage has combustion up, meaning we will need to peel both. Our warrior immediately charges the mage, using intimidating shout to deny damage while stunning the druid to prevent any follow-up. Even though we could have saved this for a later setup, it is important that our warrior peeled early to deny momentum from the RMD. There is one target many low-rated PvPers forget to CC in Arena, since it's not even an actual player. It's pets. Hunters, warlocks, and windwalker monks all have pets that can be crowd controlled to reduce damage. Many hunters play with an undead pet, meaning it will be immune to fear, polymorph, and hibernate, but it can be CC'd by other spells, including shackle undead from priests. Warlock pets can be CC'd by any spell, and the same thing is true for monk images when they use storm earth and fire. The monk's tiger is considered a beast, which means it can be controlled with most CC spells, including hibernate from druids. Make sure you control the pets from BM hunters, demo warlocks, and windwalker monks, since their pet damage during CDs is often the majority of their pressure. If you think CC is the only way to peel, think again, because there is one peeling method that many lower rated players don't use. It involves peeling with pressure. That's right, your own damage can be used to peel enemy damage. You know those nature documentaries where they show two massive animals fighting? Arena is kinda like that sometimes, but bears don't win mirror matches with polymorph. They win with damage. The same concept applies in Arena. If you want to force the enemy team off of you, sometimes the quickest way to do that is with your own offense. In some cases, just attacking a target is enough to peel them. This works really well against casters if you are a melee DPS. If you wanted to shut down a mage from freely CCing your entire team, simply pressuring them with damage is the best way to lock them down. Although there are some casters that don't really need to cast in order to put out pressure, others need to cast a lot. Shadow Priests, for instance, only have one spell school for damage, meaning attacking them and threatening their casts with kicks can really shut down the majority of their pressure. Other classes like Fire Mages and Elemental Shamans don't really deal much damage outside of cooldowns with their damaging spells, but attacking them can help reduce their ability to freely cast CC, acting as peel for your team. Even against melee, peeling with damage is still effective. This is especially true against squishier melee DPS like Demon Hunters, Monks, and Rogues. Hitting a Windwalker or a DH can force them to kite away, since they are really fragile outside of defensive cooldowns. This can give your team some really important recovery time in between your own kill setups. Rogues also need to kite when trained, and attacking them forces them to use feint, which has an energy cost and can interfere with their damage rotation. Some of the bulkier melee classes like warriors aren't that punished by getting attacked, since they have a lot of damage mitigation anyway with passive defenses, but that doesn't mean that they can't be peeled with damage. You should also look at melee positioning as a way to see if target swapping might be beneficial defensively. Even a tanky melee like warrior can be forced off of your team if they are far away from their healer. In cases where they are in a bad position and out of range of heals, swapping them quickly can be enough to force them back. In some cases, pressuring the enemy healer is also an effective way to peel DPS from the enemy team. This might seem a bit confusing, but think of all the times you've been in Arena while your healer is being attacked. Usually they are frantically calling for help, causing you to abandon whatever you were doing to try and help them. This same concept applies in reverse. By going on the healer, it is enough to sometimes force the enemy team to give up some of their pressure so their healer doesn't die. We're not saying this is always a good idea, and in many cases, healers will be too far away to actually attack. But in some situations, like when a Disc Priest is pushed in aggressively, quickly targeting them can be enough to swing momentum back in your favor. There are quite a few things going on at the start of this clip. The enemy mage has combustion up with power infusion, and our priest is about to take some massive pressure. On top of that, polymorph is being casted by the mage, and if it lands, our team will be in trouble. A rogue step kicks the mage, stopping the polymorph cast. But now that kick has been used, he really can't peel any more damage with interrupts. Instead, our rogue commits vendetta on the priest with a kidney shot. This will force pain suppression. As an added bonus, it will force the enemy DPS off our priest, since now their partner is in big trouble. So, by now it should be clear that there are two really unique ways to peel damage off your team, and pro players often combine both methods at the same time. Remember, Arena is like waves. You always want to recover quickly so you can regain momentum again. This is where combining your CC and damage is highly effective. If you were able to first shut down a kill with control and then use that control to reverse with damage, that is often the best form of peeling possible. Not only will you force the enemy team back, but you can force their cooldowns and even score kills in the process. Let's see how this looks in a high-rated game. As you can see, our healer is under a lot of pressure. Storm, Earth, and Fire has just been used by the enemy monk, and the Demon Hunter is casting the Hunt. We will need to peel immediately. Our mage immediately uses Dragon's Breath to halt damage and then follows this up with a Frost Nova. This will prevent all of the damage from the monk's pets. This will allow our paladin to escape, but now our team needs to keep up the control in order to swing momentum back in our favor. Our Shadow Priest denies even more of the monk's cooldowns with Psychic Horror, and then covers this with a Silence on the paladin. Now that we have recovered, our team reverses pressure on the enemy team off the back of this control. Our mage pops Combust, and this will be lights out for the Demon Hunter. And there you have it. If you didn't watch our guide on using CC offensively, we highly suggest checking it out since it will cover the other side of control. And if you're looking for detailed guides on how to peel for your class, be sure to check out skillcap.com/wow to see our class courses that are curated and designed by some of the best players in the world. And we promise they know a thing or two about peeling. As always though, thanks for watching. Hope to see you soon.
Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age.
Yeah, what's happening, y'all? Y'all know what it is. Bone Thugs in the building. Well, on the streets, right here where we from, East 1999, St. Clair, baby. Y'all see it, we right on the block.
We really picked this spot right here because, St. Clair is the strip that we all represent, all the way from one all the way up to Euclid. We know St. Clair is that strip, but this particular street, 99, is where Bone Thugs and Harmony really was getting their thing on out here, doing what we had to do to make ends meet, and really like spending them long nights on the block, coming up with songs like Creeping on the Come Up and No Shorts, No Losses and all that. This sign right here is when we did Creeping on the Come Up album cover with Easy in the window. This was the block right here.
And on our first video, Thuggers Workers Bone, we got it in there too. Our liquor store right there is closed. Now they building something else. They used to be economies right there. One-way bus tickets. One-way bus tickets, man. Greyhound. Then we got the number, and I think it was crazy. Rapped on the phone for his secretary, and she let him know he was somebody he needed to holler at. So we heard he had a show in Cleveland. Hustled up to get their money together to go all.
Let's find out. What I gotta do?
Hey everyone, this is Coffee with Soul. This is where we all just hang out and have a bit of a chat, hold a bit of a discussion, maybe swear a little bit, and try to have a good time. So I want to give a good and hearty hello to the folks that are joining us early, but of course you could always join us. If you want to be part of the super exciting action, well, we run every Tuesday through Thursday, starting at 8:30 a.m. The address is somewhere where I pasted it. But let's give a big hello to Ezreal you're the first person to say hi. What's up to Justin? What's up to Jalzon? As much as I see it. What's up to Menergy? What's up to Fane? What's up to Penny Hero? First time talker. Good to have you. What's up to DeGrissimer? What's up to Betty? Hello, hello, hello. I love y'all. And let's get started with these patch notes, I should say. Amazing, I want to say. It's incredible, I want to say. It's everything that we could love in a patch or an expansion or whatever is what I'd love to say. I think to be most accurate though, it's like I said this in a tweet yesterday. This patch feels like Christmas that's come early, but it's also come late, right? Not I mean, the whole should have been here before. But we're seeing like so many really, really nice quality of life changes with respect to alt and other such things. And I just want to say off the bat that, in the future, I do very much hope that when we see the next thing, like in 9.2, we're going to see another thing. I hope that it's also released with respect to how alts play out with all these different sorts of catch-ups and things that are coming in several months later. I think we're going to be about 3 or 4 months into patch 9.1 until we get to 9.15, and then we got all this like kind of cool stuff. But things are coming along. More and more things are becoming testable. I haven't really taken a good look myself, at least into the patch. I looked at the notes, obviously, so I'm going to go over like some of the highlights, and I'll be going over them a bit more in depth for the weekly in a couple of days. But looking at a couple of things, I wrote down like a couple of things that I was like, ooh, yeah, that's that sort of thing. And let's see if this actually works, because right now my web browser does not want to work. That's cool. I appreciate that. Thanks, Google browser thing. One step closer to Firefox. Know what I mean? Actually, Firefox gives me lots of problems, so that's why I'm still working with Google. And at some point, I'll be able to get this out. Okay, here we go. I should give a celebratory acknowledgement for, I believe it was the Guild Progress that was able to smash all the Phase 2 Burning Crusade Classic raids just like that. Just like that. It was absolutely expected, beyond the, it's gonna be pre-nerf this content and other such things. Oh, thank you, Menergy. Thank you very much. It's gonna be pre-nerf. It's gonna last much longer. By what, like a measurement of minutes or something like that? And this isn't even a diss. This is just like the cold, boring reality of what you get when you have educated and prepared players being thrown at old content. That's really the long and short of it. Take away most of the time gating and things like that, and then we're okay. So now what we're going to see people farming the crap out of tier 5 content. I think that's about right. Yeah, tier 5. And then I think after this, like, I think it's between Hyjal and Black Temple, that's tier 6. Some people are gonna have to correct me on that one, because I'm clearly demonstrating that I did not raid 25-man stuff in Burning Crusade. What's up, Azure? Oh well, sorry about that. But I imagine that, these teams and others, among others, are gonna be farming the crap out of what is now current content. I don't know if those getting those like those tears of eternity or whatnot. I don't know if that's going to be available now, or if it's something that they gotta wait for the next phase in order to do that. Black Temple is tier 6. Thank you. See, demonstrating incompetence here. Well, we'll see. I mean, that's pretty much the expectation now, at least among like the best of the best, right? Most everyone else that's still playing TBC Classic, which I'm sure plays out. I'm sure it plays out fine for most folks. I think the big problem that people are identifying with most is with regards to like PvP queues and things like that. So it's probably that I don't know how that's gonna go, but best of luck to them and congrats to the teams that smashed that thing like so freaking fast. And I don't know why. Why is one of my browsers just not wanting to work right? I think I'm having computer problems. Oh well. So anyway, to the 915 patch. Excuse me. Highlights that I saw. Oh man, bolstering got. It's a huge nerf. Holy crap! So bolstering, as you know right now, you kill mobs in a Mythic Plus. Every mob that's killed, the surrounding mobs within a certain radius, they are buffed. They get more health, they get more damage, and the buff is permanent. And then, like if there's like a really big screw up, like people blow up and add too hard, or someone accidentally pulls another pack over, and then that pack comes over, and then all of those get bolstered too early because the other mobs die, and then everyone's really sad. That shit got nerfed hard because now bolstering is a temporary buff and it only lasts for 20 seconds. And it just kind of like, thinking of this over in my head, I'm like, that they pretty much undid bolstering. It feels, at least at a glance, it feels so non-threatening now. It's sort of like having not explosive, not grievous. I remember there was some. No, I think it was bursting. There we go. It's kind of like bursting, except very different. Where you just want to make sure that the buff doesn't refresh. But otherwise, at worst, it's like 20 seconds of I feel kind of bad about myself, and then the mob's damage and HP will go down, and I don't know, like that feels good. And on top of that, there was also a nerf to necrotic, I believe, where the duration it was reduced by about like 25 to 35%, something like that. I think it only lasts like 6 seconds. I don't know off the top of my head, but necrotic got a nerf where basically the debuff's duration is a lot shorter. So one, the damage ticks are going to be potentially a bit shorter, but more than anything, tanks will be able to make that thing fall off a heck of a lot faster. What I would love to see is, I don't think we'll ever see this happen. I would love to see like just like a very brief, how should I describe this? Like when a tank gets into combat, of course you get necrotic stacks like right away. You get a whole a fairly good crap ton of stacks, and then typically you gotta run away or start kiting or something like that. I would love it if they made it so that when you engaged with mobs, it took like a couple of seconds before the mob started applying necrotic stacks. Something like that to like get like some good solid initial aggro, like something like I think that would help like a little bit as well. That would be really nice. But seeing a nerf like that, that's huge. I love it. I love it. I saw something about an account-wide chest that you can buy from an heirloom vendor, as long as you meet a certain rating requirement. So I believe for Mythic Plus, you need to have a rating of 1500, so which is the Keystone Conqueror achievement. In order to buy this chest, for this Conquest chest, you need a PvP rating of 1600, something like that. I couldn't test this because I am not a Keystone Conqueror yet. I'm like one dungeon away, actually. I've been slowly building my way up, which has been really nice. A big thanks to the team that's been helping me out with that tremendously. It's been great. So thanks to them. But not able to test it. What this does though, it sets a really interesting precedent that I'm not quite sure how I feel about it yet, because what this does, because I think this is like a chest that you can trade down to alts, but and it's kind of a random roll, but you can effectively gear someone up with Mythic Zero gear because it has an item level of 210. You can gear someone up without them really having to go into a dungeon at all. And from there, they'll be able to slowly upgrade that gear. I mean, ideally, if they just ran Mythic Plus, then they'll be able to get like lots of Valor. They'll be able to at least get some meaningful upgrade by doing Covenant Callings and things like that. So it's another upgrade path. I think that's cool. It's a little bit weird too because there's because this kind of clashes with Korthia gear, and so the overlap. Like I said, it's a little awkward, but I think it's a nice precedent that that kind of respects one Mythic Plus career people who want to. Well, actually, I think what else I think is kind of cool is that you could just buy it for yourself, too. So, at the very least, you'll be able to like potentially roll for gear that you might want. It sucks that it's not like. It would be kind of cool if there was like a selection of stuff that you can buy that it just cost a lot more, kind of like the Titan Residuum that we had in BFA, where there was like certain Azerite gear. You want to buy that? Okay, cool. It's going to be way more expensive, but you can target whatever it is that you want. Here with upgrades, it's a little bit different, but I still think that's pretty cool. One of the biggest things though that I saw that mostly applies to me and a select few others is that account-wide ignore is going to be a thing, finally, and I'm I'm stoked for that because, well, I have problems. But more than so let me share really quick. Like I have a stan, I have a stalker, who follows me around, who whispers me random crap. From other characters, and I gotta ignore them all, and it's really annoying, and blah blah blah. And thankfully, it's just annoying. What I go through, like I said, it's annoying, it's obnoxious. It bothers me a little bit. It threatens to compromise my experience. I've reported it. Nothing's been done, and it really sucks. Yes, and I would have loved to have an account-wide ignore option. But what I experience, that ain't shit compared to what people really go through. Like women who are harassed, people who are marginalized, or people who are just hated on. It's terrible how some of these people are treated, and there hasn't been much of any recourse because reports go slow for whatever reason. And there hasn't been an account-wide ignore option until what's going to be soon in 915. So now that I ignored that person once, no matter what they do, unless they hop onto, I guess, another WoW account, they'll have to make another WoW account and then, go through that trouble. But then my ability to ignore that now has become that much more powerful. So, yay. Better late than never. I appreciate it. Cool. Thanks, Blizz. Yada, yada, yada. What's up, Fawn? And then the last thing to, I guess, talk about a little bit would be these pictures, or like what people are calling like mass censorship. We're seeing paintings and paintings and drawings and other references that are like even remotely sexual being scrubbed out or something like that. Yeah, we're talking about the paintings. Yeah, you just walked into it, chat. Sorry. I don't know what to make of it, to be honest, guys. Like to me, it's not a big deal because at least I know that if it wasn't for data mining and Wowhead and social media, I know I wouldn't have noticed. And I have a feeling that it would take a while for anyone to notice if it wasn't for data mining and things like that. And even then, people who stay out of social media, they may not hear about it at all, because right now it's just kind of a flashpoint. I think people are making a mountain out of a molehill. OMG, censorship. What are they doing to my game? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, right. Yeah, go ahead. Keep defending your game. Some folks have said that this has something to do with. I'm not going to show them. Whatever. This is like almost a non-story, but I can't help but talk about it. Some folks have said that this what is a kind of a response to China, and how China is coming down on like everything, being super oppressive, not just with game time, but with um, yeah, not just with limiting playtime, but with just everything gaming. There's so many things going on in China with regards to gaming and how they're trying to clamp down on weird philosophies, weird Western Eastern philosophies, and um, coming down on um, uh, game studios being predatory with their microtransactions and things like that, which I think is good. I like that side. Trying to come down on making it feel like kids want to gamble and stuff like that. Like I'm cool with that. I do recall they also talked about wanting to fight against. Uh, um, I don't know what word they used, but they were just trying to fight against men becoming more effeminate because of the way characters are portrayed in video games. And I'm like, come on. But I'm not really. But let's not talk about that. Let's just go back to World of Warcraft, where we see like a painting of a good looking lady with some cleavage, and then now it's covered up, or a person who's kind of laying on their side in a promiscuous position. It's been replaced by a bowl of fruit, which I find to actually be more sexually appealing than the 8-bit looking painting that was there. So I don't buy into the giant. I don't really buy into the China thing, because the way I see it, like China has not exactly a different client, but you can just hit a toggle and then the client changes from character models, mostly with character models. A lot of things change there. So I don't really buy into that, because because the WoW team can always produce like a separate client for NetEase that has like other things scrubbed away. That's fine. So I don't really buy into that as much as some people want to try to make a thing out of it. My take is mostly what we don't know. We don't know what made those paintings come up in the first place. It could have just been it could have, this could be Blizzard just being very very heavy-handed with, okay, let's scrub all these things that could be controversial or whatnot. But we don't know what could be behind it either. There could have been a story behind some of these paintings where some art person was like, yeah, let's put that on. She looks hella hot. And then some other art person, maybe a female, could have been like, no, I don't think that's great. There could have been some sort of like dust up because of that, some drama and blah, blah, blah. Creative differences that became, professional and creative differences that became personal for whatever reason. A story that we have no idea that happened, that could have been behind these. And now they're taking those things back. For all we know, like Alex Cosby could have been like, yeah, those paintings, yeah, let's do that. That's exactly what I want, And so now that's going away. We don't know, and that's fine if that's if that's how it's going to be. The reactions coming from these folks, though, from some folks, though, I guess. You feel like your game is being defiled and all that, or it's not the same game, and blah blah blah. Thank you very much, Diaz. Thank you. For the gifted subs. The way I see it, though, it's only a big deal because people are just making a big deal out of it. I can see people being fearful of the slippery slope. Oh, it started off with naming a whole city to something else because of a reference and all that stuff. What's next? But I feel, yeah, I guess I simply disagree. I don't feel like I'm losing much out of it, out of changes like these. I would feel more for people who feel marginalized, whether it's players or it's employees over at Blizzard or any game dev, where knowing that I would see a certain thing in game,
Really?
and the story behind it was a story of misogyny and someone and someone being marginalized or whatever, then I would feel bad about that being there, because I would think to myself, wow, was that really worth it? And
Damn it.
I don't think so, because some people are scared that, oh, this is going to take away slut mogs. This is going to take it's going to take away slut mogs. It's going to take away like those form it's going to take away the expression of not the game, because a painting is just a painting, right? That's the game presenting something to us. But if they nerf slut mogs, sorry for having for using a term as crude as that, but you know what I'm talking about. It's easy that way. Nerfing those would be a nerf to the player expression, and I'm not quite sure how to feel about that.
Why does there have to be a fucking world
But
quest
I think I would
here?
react more strongly to it, because this is messing with what the players had and then taking it away. It's no different from other things. It's no different. It runs some parallels with like borrowed power and things like that. It's I worked hard to get that item and now you change that item on me.
Oh wait,
That doesn't feel right. It's kind of like saying, hey Blizz, we want you to remake this gear and up-res it just because. And Blizzard's like, oh, we're not going to do it just because. Maybe if we introduce a new tier, then we'll have new items that are up-res. And that's precisely what happened when they went from tier 6 gear to tier whatever it is. From tier 6 gear in vanilla to the Tomb of Sargeras gear. And then then now the recolor of the Tomb of Sargeras gear that's coming later. So I wouldn't want to, I don't want to see things from that players worked hard to get be taken away. That doesn't. That would be a really bad take, I think. Now that I've kind of like talked it out, I do think that would be bad. Paintings though, I don't care. How many people have posed in front of those paintings, like the Cosby family did with the thing with that portrait? Who does that? That'd be weird. I don't imagine a lot of our peers going like, okay, let's go to wherever those paintings are. I don't know where they are, but let's go to where they are, because I don't know. Because there's a story behind it. We made a narrative behind it. I don't think that's a big deal. Alligator says it's one of those things where I think it's silly, but it doesn't affect or hurt me. If changing it makes someone else feel better, then so be it. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the people who genuinely feel grr about it. I mean, I guess the people that are saying stuff, it's worth like listening to what they have to say, but it's hard to take them seriously. Because it's hard to take them seriously because those same people otherwise haven't really said anything. Otherwise, these people would be saying, we need WoW to be more sexual. We need sexual liberation.
What am I listening to?
The first thought that did come to mind when I saw those nerfs, though, the changes to those paintings, my thought was like, okay, they're either trying to just kind of nerf sexuality or just take away like these things that try to objectify women. Which I find almost distasteful because they changed that one picture of the lady lying on her side. They changed it to fruit. Oh, peach. I could eat a peach for hours. But what I would have liked to have seen would be like, okay, why don't we add some guys to it? Why don't we have some dudes in like really low cut pants and almost showing pubes that just kind of doing like a cool little Calvin Klein pose or something like that. I don't think that's a big, I don't think that would be a big deal. As long as it's tasteful, as long as it's based on, what if they showed like Greek-like statues where they're showing their dongs and all that stuff? Would that be a big deal, or is that just an homage to art? Parents may have something to say about that, and that's Face Off is my favorite movie in the planet, by the way.
I don't know if I can do it anymore. I like this. got chapter. Now you're gonna do boss, I think. Why? Oh yeah, I gotta be watching. Let's get done.
Keep pressing the attack.
Get back.
Many of us want to touch grass, you know, get out of the cosmic mire, return to the Azeroth that we know, to the Alliance, to the Horde, the factions of the old world, and really that world that we've all spent those countless hours in. Class Order Halls, first introduced in Legion, are the perfect feature to do this, and a perfect feature for a future expansion. One that would equal hype. A big back-of-the-box feature that, rather than borrowed power, focuses on expanding the world of Warcraft for the future and making you happy. Now warning, this video is going to get nice and cozy, and with Boxu, today's sponsor, you can get yourself a slice of Japan each month. You'll get 10% up to $47 off with my link down below.
47.
And guess what? You're going to get even more content because you want to see Matt tear into this, have some fun, see some new snacks. We got the video. You'll see it down below. Look, these are super fun boxes that basically take you on a little journey through top-notch Japanese snacking. Like, this ships from the Japanese post. It's the real stuff. They've partnered with unique people to make, just unique, cool snacks. And man, so you get the culture guide, right? This is the Moon Festival one that explains where every item is actually from, who made it, all of that stuff. And I mean, man, this time, these black strawberries. Now, we had I think it was the white strawberries last time, and these are insane. A total mind blow, if you remember the video. We've also got so much, like green tea buns, mochis, matcha cake, salted black bitter chocolate, chinsuko, and many other things. So yeah, I'm basically diving into the tasting recording right after doing this video, and if you want to get yours and join in, you get 10% off with my link down below. These are a bunch of fun, and really it's just a nice little cultural slice. It will be stuff you've not really tasted before. Slice of Japan, awesome. So, Boxu, thank you.
Come on, phone.
Let's go. The Fourth War is over, and we have survived the Shadowlands. What world do we return to? How did we leave it? You see, in Legion, we led our orders, and then in Battle for Azeroth, we seemingly abandoned them. Kind of forgot you were the High Lord, and we've essentially not really thought about them since. Even though the likes of the Silver Hand joined the war and even fought the Sunwalkers. Azeroth is a mess. Years of war mean that even the Cataclysm's damage is still felt. Never mind that of the Legion's third invasion or the Fourth War. We reunite with, in this new feature, old comrades, our old Order Hall buddies. We squash the beefs of the Fourth War, and we reform our orders. All taking place, essentially, through class quests. Did the Paladin Order Hall survive the Fourth War? A war that saw Sunwalker and Silverhand spill each other's blood? Or the Hunters? What of our cozy lodge? My character is the Huntsmaster, yet she has not paid a visit or helped her order. Really, once we lost our artifacts, we pretty much just up and left. So, with the reintroduction of this feature, we find the class orders a bit worn down, a little bit abandoned, led by those who picked up the pieces after we left. And that's the difference. You've touched Azeroth's heart. You've wielded the power of Void, you've journeyed to the afterlife, and you'll do many other great deeds. You simply are too busy to lead the paladins, hunters, warlocks, or rogues of Azeroth. You've got too many things to do, and you might be off on a special mission. And when you are, the Order Hall's going to need a leader. So in this new version of Class Order Halls, you are too busy to lead. So instead, you join as a high-ranking member. Why is this? Well, it actually removes a number of narrative limitations on your character, and it's also far less prescriptive, allowing for more player freedom in role-playing and the like. And for the Final Fantasy XIV crowd, imagine it like this. It's a bit like how your player character, the Warrior of Light, is very important, but Minfilia leads the Silence of the Seventh Dawn. With Reformation questlines complete, the Order Halls are reformed, and we can begin talking about this as a game feature. Starting with something a lot of people want, class quests.
True.
We gotta talk about class quests. You see, Blizzard struggles to tell smaller, more thematic stories in the World of Warcraft patches because those patches are generally laser focused on the current content, the current story. Those big patches often don't have the narrative framing to do smaller, more individual stories that build up the world and its characters, and also support the older, more traditional fantasies of Warcraft. We just don't have that ability right now. The likes of Green Fire obviously are a fluke, and one that happened a long time ago at that. Class Order Halls grant us the perfect opportunity for ongoing storylines in World of Warcraft. They can be big, they can be small, they can be added frequently or sparingly. The point is, they can exist.
No way.
The stories must be grounded, I think, in the traditional fantasies of the classes, and not engage deeply with world-ending threats. So here's a few ideas.
So, what is this face check app for League everyone is talking about? You can get the top meta builds with one single click. And know everyone's playstyle before the match starts. Everyone else is using face check. What about you?
Ideas for launch class quests that would take place after the reformation of the Order Halls. Simple. Paladins dealing with the aftermath of the Shadowlands. The launch of Shadowlands saw the remaining undead go feral. So for the Paladins, they're purging evil, they are defending the citizenry of Lordaeron, and this is all in a narrative that takes place after a more horde-centric Sunwalker sort of set of material in the Order Hall's Reformation. Discover the ill doings of a rogue offshoot of the mysterious Scarlet Brotherhood who, to support their political goals, are perpetrating false flag attacks to undermine Alliance legitimacy and wreak havoc on the people of Lordaeron. So it's up to the noble paladins to solve the problem. Demon Hunters. The Dark Portal has mysteriously shut down, and you, aboard the Fellhammer, are perfectly poised to travel to Outland, where you find that after the Legion's defeat, the Pit Lords are rallying stray demons. With the big Dark Portal shut down, they've now managed to secure a few holdings on Outland. Why? Well, that's for you to find out. Warlocks. The Legion has fallen. What does this mean for the world of demons? For your demons? You travel Azeroth investigating strange new demonic activity in a questline that crosses paths with the traditional warlock establishment of Azeroth and even the Fellhammer's demon hunters. So you can all discover what's really going on. Maybe there's a few dreadlords. Rogues. Rogues expand upon the Defias Brotherhood hints of Battle for Azeroth, delving into the underbelly of Azeroth in a story that spans Stormwind, Booty Bay, and Silver Moon, maybe even more, as you work out what Azeroth's criminals are really up to, and perhaps even cross paths with the Paladins, who themselves are investigating the new Scarlet Brotherhood, who of course were introduced in some pamphlets in Battle for Azeroth. If you're a warrior, well, you got a special mention because your larger story is one of forming a new Order Hall, separate from Odin. One where the fantasy feels far more at home for Azeroth's warrior culture. It's not just the very cool, and it's one that gets you warriors away from the rule of Odin. That's just a few of my examples. I have many more, but I've cut them for time. My goal here is to tell grounded enough stories that are still pretty cool and that focus on the fantasy of each class and that help to do world building in Azeroth. You know, will the Demon Hunters and Warlocks touch on some cosmic-y stuff in their story? Yeah, but it's all in a way that's really in sync with their classic class fantasy. This overall relaunch of Order Halls would ship with the Reformation questlines at launch, ideally then also with continued storylines across expansions such as the ones that I've laid out here. I would like to put in a bit of a twist. Mythic. The endgame campaigns can be played in mythical difficulty. That's much harder, with avoidable damage tuned way up, and encounters being a little bit made with each class's kit in mind. Sure, none of the extreme difficulty or intricacy of the Mage Tower, but enough to make a hunter feel like it's time to use a few traps, tranks, and more. And of course, completion on mythic difficulty would earn you some nice little cosmetic rewards. Perhaps at minimum an elite class tabard, or ideally a bit more. These, of course, all are quests that feature a rich cast of characters, ones many of whom you will already know from Legion, and characters who, over the years, you will get to know very, very well indeed, as this is a feature designed to be carried across expansions. Oh, and once this is established, let's have some leveling class quests again. So, here you can see a slice of narrative content. Even if we are away in some far-off planet, we can tell these Azerothian stories through class order halls. That doesn't mean that order halls can't be involved with little aspects of new expansions, which I'll talk about soon. So what about the rest? Because it's not just quests. Well, the rest is actually where I think things get better and better. World of Warcraft has a problem. It kind of doesn't teach its own mechanics to players that well, instead relying on the excellent community support that World of Warcraft enjoys. It's got another problem. The Proving Grounds is underused, really hasn't been maintained that well, hasn't been expanded upon, and it specifically is themed to one expansion. Oh, and it also doesn't have real class-based elements. So, Proving Grounds version 2 is a feature of class order halls. Initially, only the basics are unlocked, but as you ascend the ranks, you literally, like physically, visibly, grow your order hall's Proving Ground, taking it from a small, rough patch of dirt to the perfect training ground for a bunch of real hardcore pros. Now, to make this doable, each Proving Ground is actually identical in terms of base mobs and mechanics, but of course with unique reskins for every single class. But then, a sprinkling of class-specific mobs and mechanics are added to each, such that somebody with a platinum rank in the Hunter Order Hall is a real good hunter. And like with the Miss of Pandaria Proving Grounds, there is going to be an endless mode, with achievements and other rewards. And then also, unlike the Hot Proving Grounds, there's going to be a part of this that actually will teach common raid mechanics of Warcraft, things like stacking, spreading, interrupting, and so on. Alright, that's not it though. Let's go. Remember the Mage Tower? That's just that when it's all a part of class order halls. It actually means that a Mage Tower-like feature literally always makes narrative sense. Now, for this, production considerations are important. 36 unique and hard bosses that are super tailored to every spec, that's not feasible. So here is the framing. Class order halls together strike up an alliance to defeat the strongest foes in the land. This would allow for encounters to be shared between specs, just like with the Legion Mage Tower. All Blizzard would need to do is add perhaps one fight per expansion to this, you know, for everybody, and just keep them updated with scaling between the expansions. I mean, hell, when a new expansion comes out, kind of like with the Brawlers Guild, you could just rescale or tweak the past bosses, remixing them such that they're a fresh challenge for a fresh reward. And you might say, oh, that's a lot of balancing work. Well, I'd say maybe if we're not doing a new thing like corruption gear or, you know, domination shards every single patch with loads of borrowed power, maybe they'll have some time to make you some content instead. Continuing with the content. What is the point of an order of hunters if they are not able to go and hunt the world's greatest beasts, to aid in important conservation work for the habitats of Azeroth, and maybe even track down the cryptids of Azeroth? A new feature called the Duty Board mixes daily and weekly quests along with seasonal or expansion-spanning goals, giving you content to do for Order Hall currency. It's like this for every order hall. And yeah, it's quite a bit of work. But guess what? The whole point is this is an evergreen system that, you know, you build it and it will stand to you and stand to the game forever. Therefore, it is the sort of work that's worth doing. And of course, you build all these things, so it's easy to just bolt on some more content if there's a bit of slack in the production schedule. So what does that order hall currency do? Well, it could let you buy some cosmetic rewards that are perhaps themed around your class and its specs. This could be expanded even into order hall upgrades if you wanted to do that. It'd be a cool narrative. I mean, the orders work for the good of Azeroth, and in return, Azeroth's great kingdoms fund and support the order halls, letting them get bigger and grander, buildings and facilities and things. Oh, facilities. Let's talk about those. Full player housing is quite hard. It is not insurmountable, but it is hard. A lot of assets, having to make an item placement system, probably loads more. Well, how about this? A high-ranking paladin needs somewhere to hang up their hammer and wind down, chill out, maybe plan their next move. Personal quarters are a new feature that is essentially player housing light. At a minimum, this is the easiest version, you have your quarters and you have a set selection of upgrades that you can make. These basically add in more furnishing options. Now, if granular placement of items is not possible, then just have pre-made kits of furnishings, almost like the player housing in Oblivion, the Elder Scrolls game. Included in your quarters are an armory, where you can display a few of your favorite transmogrification sets, and of course a room to display your achievements. Trophies from boss kills. The more the merrier here. Now, to step it up a notch, if we can get granular placement of furniture within your quarters, and even customization of the room layout, that would be ideal. I mean, come on, let people add in some windows, perhaps mix and match furniture gathered from across World of Warcraft's many different styles. And let's be real, between the Legion expansion and BFA, much of the asset creation work, basically HD versions of classic Warcraft sort of buildings, most of that's already done, or at least a lot of it. I mean, I want to see what happens when somebody makes a cozy office aboard the Fellhammer. Can a demon hunter still hold on to their knight or blood elf roots? And while a feature like this is not for everyone, this would dip our toes in the player housing water, allowing for more character progression and of course letting people see their achievements physically be represented in a way that's not a number or a UI panel. I think this would be great. I mean, come on, you could even use Zoval's nipple ring as, your hearth piece, or maybe your door knocker. I mean, think of the opportunities. And if player housing was to ever come into the game, of course, any progression made in this would be shared over to full player housing. Okay, that's personal quarters. Let's talk about order hall facilities.
Moon, if you're watching, you're gonna have to give me a second.
Order halls are more than just a building, though at the start, they will just be that, just a core building and little training area. Players will help their order grow and expand. Ascend the ranks of the training area, and as you do, you'll build up the training area.
Damn it.
Complete duties, earn currency, use that to kit out and expand your personal quarters. What else then? Well, this is where we go back to class fantasies, right? What cool things can we do? Can hunters fast travel to the various lodges found across Azeroth? Can demon hunters use the Fellhammer to travel to captured Legion encampments across Azeroth? Can shamans perhaps traverse the elemental planes to travel great distances across Azeroth? Those are a few quick travel-related ideas for order hall facilities, but you could push things beyond that. One easy example is that each new expansion can see the class orders establish new outposts in the new continent of the new expansion, bringing a little bit of home with them, maybe even a few little bits of content, tiny bits of content, and perhaps some travel options. Maybe then, each order hall has an area for dueling. Hunter versus hunter duels. Let's have that be a thing. Maybe the Order Hall Proving Ground has got a PvP mode featuring a juiced up version of the Comp Stomp AI to help people train for PvP-like stuff. Look, here's the point, right? You start off real small with something like this, and it slowly gets built over time and over expansions. Maybe a little 0.5 patch has a thing bolted onto them, and it just works. This is not a build-around feature for an expansion that is then thrown away. This, I think, could and perhaps should
be a core part of World of Warcraft. A platform for player fantasy, neat thematic features, and continued storytelling that delivers players a boots-on-the-ground classic Warcraft fantasy, regardless of whether we're in the 8th fractal of the great cosmic jellyfish, or perhaps debating the finer points of philosophy with, I don't know, a talking cloud that's actually the consciousness of a first one sucked into a nebula. Because maybe that's where WoW lore is going. Who knows? Okay, let's talk about rewards. Rewards then. So, first, Warlock Greenfire was awesome! How do we do that again? Well, maybe I'll talk about my main, the Hunter, as an example. What if you want to be a Dark Ranger where your disengage is a shadowy backflip, and your projectiles have got this cool black swirling mist like Sylvanas? A lot of hunters would get crazy for that. Or maybe you want a different fantasy with some elemental colored projectiles. Maybe some cool new quivers, ammo pouches that hang at your belt. Perhaps different sound effect choices for your weaponry, if you would like that. Look at this Legion Paladin gear. It's all voidy. So, shall we give the practitioners of the light a bit of a green fire treatment? Because, hey, the whole Void Paladin ship has sailed. Death Knights, do you want more zombies? Rogues, do you want different stealth and poison effects? Class thematic cosmetic weapon enchants? More class sets with tints for each spec? Maybe a mythic version for completing the class challenges? Class tabards? New titles? New pets? More class mounts? New unlocks for your personal quarters? And way more. I crammed out this entire video proposal in one night of thinking and an afternoon of writing. I am sure a full team thinking about ideas for awards could do a lot more. Getting more mechanical then, there's a bit of me that's tempted to revive my old class masteries idea, which essentially would be a second talent tree that every class gets, but it's the class talent tree, it's not to do with the spec. And it's a tree that would start off small, it would be added to over time, and it would be for your class, allowing you to unlock some cool non-throughput based abilities. Now, it's hard to really think up things here, but I'm sure a large team could do it.
Don't think I should.
Can a hunter call a big bird to airlift them anywhere in a 1,000-yard range when they're not in combat? Could a paladin permanently avoid being dazed while mounted, perhaps instead dazing mobs who attack them? I mean, damn, it'd be pretty nice to be running behind a paladin. Maybe rogues could have their pickpocketing minigame be expanded upon. Maybe shamans could harness the elements in new out-of-combat ways. Sure, most of this would have to be disabled in instanced combat, but I think the idea here is alluring, a way to deepen class fantasy over spec fantasy, and to make the basics of your character feel a bit different because of your class. Admittedly, this would be quite hard to pull off. Now, the likes of, say, tintable class sets, that's a lot more achievable because you can throw artists at the problem, but you know, a unique and cool class talent set for every class in the game, well, that is harder. Faction restrictions. This is another dimension, because loads of players want faction restrictions to be removed. Now, if this was done via something like a mercenary mode, then that's our characters being mercenaries. That doesn't make much sense for an honorable paladin, and it, you know, if you're a merc, there's some connotations with that. And I think this narrative player experience and vibe stuff is dead important to an MMO in a big virtual world. I think that if class order halls exist, then cross-faction gameplay makes far, far more sense. I think it would just work. Even some aspects of PvP could be reframed as war games. But I do admit, keeping WoW stacked with PvP, Horde versus Alliance content, while also loosening faction restrictions, that is kind of hard to do. So honestly, I think a little bit of narrative dissonance just has to be allowed. Or, you know, at least let you be the edgy member of your order hall who totally is still down to fight the Alliance or the Horde. But that's a handy benefit here. Next, though, I want to talk about what this just kind of accomplished.
Serie A soccer is streaming on Paramount Plus. And two Italian
So much
giants collide
damage.
this weekend when Juventus hosts AC Milan.
Why?
2:45
What the
streaming
fuck?
live on Paramount Plus.
For the casual, fantasy-driven player, this provides new storylines, new grinds, and new ways to customize your character. It also provides you with a really good reason to have one of every single class in the game. And every time an expansion comes out and there's a new set of Order Hall content, bam, you've got something to do on every toon. You may not be the top raider in your Order Hall, maybe for a more casual player, but you know what? You've helped your order. You've done your duties. You've got some cool rewards. And you've done all of this while you've seen some nice, neat visual progress. Now, for the raiders, dungeoneers, and PvPers, well, they're actually also regular people who like all of that casual stuff too in many cases. But they also do really hard content, and damn straight, their Order Hall will reflect that. As I said earlier, mount the nipple rings of a defeated Zoval atop your hearth. Be the local god of dueling in your order's arena. And the paladin who bested the great challenge boss the earliest, being among the first to unlock the incredible new transmog weapon. I mean, come on, it was cool. The Mage Tower would be cool again here. If Blizzard wanted to, they could actually get progression via Order Hall upgrades that would actually build out the various buildings of your Order Hall, granting you new cosmetics and functionality, and this is the sort of thing that would be achieved by doing the story quests, doing the duty board content, things like that. There's a few concerns about phasing issues, but I don't think they're insurmountable. There's another idea. Perhaps the duty board progress gates legs of the storyline, much like the progression of patch 5.1. So, you do a few storyline quests, then over the next, 2-3 weeks, you dabble in the duty board a little bit, just in your off time. Oh no, you've unlocked the next quest. Just like those patch 5.1 reps that seem to go down pretty well. Perhaps even give the player a personal rank with their Order Hall that correlates to a new reputation bar. Right? Like, almost an
I'm right in the
homage
middle
to
of
the honor
something. What?
system of classic PvP. And if you have this new rep bar, and you have, doing
Okay.
content and Azeroth help out that rep bar, then what about this crazy idea that came to me mid-script? Okay? Got a load of this.
Hey, Moon, what are you doing?
Make it a Paragon rep bar, where you get reputation by doing just about anything in the game, because you're a representative of your Order Hall. Kill a raid boss? Get some Order Hall rep. Each time you fill up that bar, you get a token currency. And those tokens, that currency, can be spent on some cool new rewards. Some people might fill up that raid bar by doing their duties, their daily quests, their weekly quests. Other people may fill up that bar by doing PvP, others by raiding. Either way, if you're a champion of, say, the Hunter Order Hall, then whether you're doing duties, training in the Proving Ground, fighting the latest raid bosses or anything, you're carrying your banner. You're carrying the banner of the Order Hall. You're doing good stuff. So yeah, this is basically a non-player power version of Paragon leveling. It's one that you could just institute once and have it literally just be in the game forever, not needing to be tied into an expansion. Bam. I think that would be awesome. There's so much more you could do with all of this. I mean, what if these organizations are affiliated with a reformed Champions of Azeroth faction that is led by Khadgar, a group that's really pledging to come together for the greater good? Ultimately, look, if WoW is to double down on your character having a defined role in the world, then let it be a role that you choose, and let the continuing narrative of World of Warcraft reflect that. Because they told you were the Maw-Walker and it was unavoidable. But if you are the Huntsmaster or the whatever the title is in your Order Hall, that's something you chose. Because when you turned on World of Warcraft for the first time, that's the class you chose. So finally, instead of some silly othering term like Maw-Walker that makes you think, oh yeah, I'm in a video game and characters can't say my character's name, you could really start to define who the player character is in a way that meshes with the player's experience. And that is something that WoW has struggled with, and this would really help the problem of World of Warcraft's got a story that your character watches, instead of WoW having a story that your character really feels like it's a part of. Again, getting WoW a little bit closer to competing with FF in that regard. Okay, look, problems, I should talk about them.
I'm in
there's
again.
the risk of drawing people out of cities. I think
What are
in
you
some
doing?
ways that ship has sailed. I don't think it would be that bad. And obviously, you keep the auction house and all of that stuff still in Stormwind and Orgrimmar. Also, here's a potential risk
replying
factor.
when I can.
Blizzard would have to commit to a feature. Yeah, good actually, because I think that instead of pussyfooting about, oh, we're going to do this and it's going to last for 2 years only because, you know, oh, what if it isn't good? I think you actually have to be able to make something that's fucking awesome, decide that that is an element of your game, and stick with it. Yeah. WoW actually needs to push forward instead of iterate the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. And that's what modern WoW has been. Doing the same thing again and again and again and again, but slightly differently. This actually pushes WoW forward. And also, this is the sort of thing that I think would be quite pipeline friendly and not particularly complex in the development department. Okay, problem solved. Let's kind of conclude. So why did I bother? Because the chances of this being a thing are tiny. And Blizzard really do seem very focused on this cosmic story that they want to tell. So simply put, here's why I bothered. I think that this is the stuff that is what most players, the active players, and a great many lapsed players actually want. And I think that this is a fantasy and a vibe that we already know in a very, very basic and small implementation was very popular in the Legion expansion. Right? You know, the Legion expansion that had
Uh-oh. I'm dead.
36
No, I'm not.
quest lines
Whew.
for artifact acquisition, and then quest lines for every single order hall at launch. We already know a version of this is popular. So designing a new one that is basically designed to be a platform for core Warcraft vibes for years, surely that would make a lot of people excited. People excited about the game returning to the fantasy of Azeroth and its peoples. Order halls are a way for the modern game to do that while solving a bunch of content and gameplay problems and giving the people what they want and what I think they would enjoy. So there you go. That is a top-level proposal from a feature. Yes, there's basically not much in the way of details here because, you know, this is a YouTube video and I vaguely wanted to be a watchable length. And I've been recording for 31 minutes already, so my God. It's time to turn the camera off and ask you, what do you think about this sort of thing?
Before you jumped in.
Tell
he
me.
actually did talk
So
about it.
You know what your class is.
I would love housing.
In an idea of your class order holding back,
It would give me something to do.
would you change
More
its
than just
location?
end game.
What are features that, as a Death Knight, you would
Which
think would be
obviously
awesome?
I like
As a
the
hunter,
endgame,
as a
but-
paladin, as a priest? What would you love to see? Tell me. I seriously want to know. I want to know where you're all at. That's it for me. Have a great day. Thanks for bearing with this video, you know, one where we all know none of this shit's going to happen probably. And I'll see you next time.
So I switched to Venthyr. Got my shit fixed finally, by the way. But, what was I saying? They say this is one of the hardest things in the game to play.
Liberty
Without
Mutual
a
Insurance Company presents
organized group. I can see why they would say that for
Hey,
like,
you. Liberty Mutual customizes your
on
car insurance. So you only
experience,
pay for what you
holy
need. So if you're a
paladins.
fan of saving money on
But
your insurance,
for
there's
people
one
that's
place you
been
should
playing
go.
in holy paladin for a long time, it's not hard. Of course, I've only been doing 15s too.
Because you've been second. So what do we want to use CD-wise, Jack? Is it like, you want us...
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Do you know what time it is? Is it that time
Man,
of
I
the
think
year?
it smells
the
like
most
Friday.
Wonderful. No, it's TLF, baby, and that stands for
Tier list flame. What?
Days.
No. Anyway,
What are we doing today? What are we
we're
doing?
looking at melee, the most fun melee in our opinion.
What the
You
fuck?
can watch, but it's basically what we think is most fun. Not
Yeah.
what's better, not what
That's
has most
aggro?
damage, but although damage kind of factors.
yeah,
into
damage, class
rotation,
fantasy, mechanics,
depth,
rotation,
uh,
depth, you know, paid depth and all of that. But, you know, it has been proven that we play much more melees than ranged. Now, that doesn't mean
Yeah,
we
only at
don't like
15.
ranged. I love my mace to
Can't
death,
wait to get
and
into
he
those.
loves his shadow praise to death.
Huh?
Hard to
What?
read.
Moving along, but today it is melee day,
Yep.
and we have to focus on whatever we think is fun, and maybe
I
you
gotta go
can
get
let
a
us know in the
camera
comments
soon.
as well what you think about it. All right, it's totally fine. having fun with melees. And the best way to have fun with melees it is with improving your UI and stuff with add-ons. And add-ons that are being managed on the CurseForge client. Yes, I've been using CurseForge since they took over the Twitch app. And it has been a smooth ride ever since. The app is super stable. Constant updates. I think on a weekly basis now we have updates to everything like bugs and quality of life improvements and whatnot. Updating all of your add-ons with one button, sorting them out alphabetically, which, do I remind you, on the Twitch app you couldn't ordinate them alphabetically. So that's really, really good. And also they are helping out the add-on creators all around. 70% of the revenue from the ads over there and the subscriptions are going to the add-ons creators directly. So everybody gets to win with this. We use it, and listen, if you want to get all of the add-ons we use, just check the link in the description. There's a page there with all of our add-ons, but only after you watch the video, okay? Because you already know you know how it works, okay?
We have time.
All right. Thank you guys first for sponsoring the video, and now let's get into the Arms Warrior.
Arms Warrior.
Is it fun? Oh my God,
this is
fun?
I think the only melee that we've both played at this point in this patch.
Yeah, boy. Man, do I love it.
Arms Warrior. Okay, so Arms Warrior did get a bunch of buffs, which made it shine a little bit more on the meters. It's still really fun, and the fact that you can play Kyrian right now. Personally, for my Arms Warrior,
I play Nightface.
Play Nightface, so we kind of have like sense of the both aspects of
the
Arms.
Yeah.
I really like the fact that Enduring Blow is the legendary of choice. It's really fun to just smash mortal strikes and big mortal strikes and bigger mortal strikes.
Well, my friend, I play with Signet of Tormented Kings, and but I love it in Mythic Plus. I only raided a couple of times, and the first time I raided on Heroic, I got my Jatis, and it was super fun. Now playing Night Fae, it's really really great. The thing about Arms that I like, and this is not a meta talk, okay? I know Arms is pretty meta in all content, but it has nothing to do with it. It's just that feel of being a more methodical melee and being able to pull ahead some rage and
take it easy, think about it.
Yeah, you don't spam shit, because if you spam shit, nothing's gonna go for it. So it has a little bit, I would say, more intellectual approach to it, and it is an Arms Warrior, right? So you would expect well, you have that, but nevertheless, it's fun. I'm gonna put it in S tier. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, it's definitely an S tier. I've been really thinking about it. S tier is basically supposed to be like kind of what we think will be maining. Arms is definitely a spec that I can see myself main. There are others that I feel like will chip a little bit at that, but we'll get to them, because right now we have
Assassinación Rogue, el asesino criticalando, hombre. So we have the Assassination Rogue, and this is a spec that I have played last patch and this patch as well. It's fun. I really like it. Now, the thing about Assassination Rogue is I think I mentioned this all of the time. It's really easy to pull off in single target, and it does pretty high damage over there.
I've seen the numbers.
It fulfills that fantasy, especially now with the Dashing Scoundrel Legendary and the Frost Shard set. Really big-ass crits for sure. No problem there. I would have a problem with Assassination, not a big one, in Mythic Plus keys, just because in comparison to the other rogue specs, you have to really work to make it work.
work that damage, man.
Yeah, Assassination in keys is basically being able to maintain a lot of your dots and refreshing them while also doing high damage to a priority target and always switching around. It can get hectic sometimes. Not to mention, if you're like me and you play, with super decent geared people, now Flame on his survival, just smack shit. Ads do not last for that long, and the thing with the ticks for poisons and bleeds and the Zoldyck legendary as well, you have to have these ads live long in order for you to feel, I don't know, useful and shit. And that being said, I would rate Assassination based on these. I would say B tier. I don't know if you have anything to say about it. But
I haven't played Rogue this patch, but I've always liked the concept of Assassination. I would have put it into A tier, but since I haven't touched it yet, I'll let you.
Yeah, it drags it down a little bit for me, just because of the dungeons. The fantasy is there. You're basically master poisoner and having bleeds and and venoming and all of that. It's really cool. I would just be a little bit more happy if maybe the damage over time was a little bit better on dungeons, but regardless, let's just move along to Enhancement Shaman.
Let's move from one side to the other. Enhancement Shaman,
Your cue.
Well, Enhancement Shaman is a spec that has a lot of potential, but also needs a lot more work because I feel it's one of the most neglected melee specs in the game, together with probably Frost Decay. Enhancement Shaman just needs a little bit more attention. They were trying to do something really cool with it in the beta, but they kind of just, left it where it is right now, which is just a lot. I feel like it has a little bit too much RNG in its rotation, and you can end up, because the damage is good, but you can end up from doing really well to, oh Jesus Christ, why am I not getting Stormbringer procs? So that's my issue with Enhancement. Enhancement could be a lot better if it just had a little bit of oomph, maybe a tad damage buff, but also either make some bad luck protection with all this RNG procs, maybe fix the list of bugs, which I don't know if all of them have been fixed yet, but remember that podcast that we did with God damn.
I know.
For me, Enhancement is about B or A spec. We can put it into B by judging the same arguments that you had for Assassination. It could very well have S-class potential, but it's missing a few too many things
it shoots down,
for that to happen.
and I just...
Okay, fair enough. Now, let's move along to the kitty cat,
Obviously
to the
was not
feral,
paying
which I still absolutely adore and love, and you have to understand, you cannot... It's maybe more or less the same argument as Assassination. You cannot have two... I would say too much of a big performance in Mythic Plus. However, we do see ferals doing pretty good in keys. But in raiding, especially on pure single target, Feral is pumping hard, and it's fun to play. It's not as, I would say, slow as Assassination. Assassination is a bit more slow in terms of like energy pooling and being able to do your finishers and maintain all of your bleeds and stuff. Feral is much more faster, and for that, and that alone, not to mention that I've made this last season, and I loved it. It's gonna be an A tier, not S tier anymore, because I still feel it needs a tad more love for AOE. But that single target, oh man, it's lovely, and it's a druid. I mean, you cannot go wrong with druid. It's versatile, it's mobile, has utility. Not in raids, but it still has good things. Okay, love the kitty cats. It's an A tier. Frost Decay, what's up?
Oh man, Frost Decay is okay. So I mentioned that Frost Decay is another spec that has been neglected by Blizzard because pretty much
I'm gonna go get some hot chocolate real quick.
Playstyle aren't the same that have been for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Barely any talent changes. Like we had a new talent that's so bad that nobody even uses it. We have a couple of rows where the talents are just so good that you cannot really pick anything else. That's kind of what's holding it back. Other than that, Frost Decay is really fun. It's kind of like the Fury Warrior of DK, where it's pretty easy to get into. It has some high skills caps when it comes to maybe maintaining.
That's what you do. Skill caps. I love it.
There are hardly any other more boss moments in the game than launching your Frostwind Furies in an AoE and seeing you raise a couple of ranks in the damage meters just from that one spell alone. That's one of the most badass spells in the game. For me, Frost Decay is around A tier. I actually do find it way more fun than Enhancement. It's if it could have a little bit more viability in the talents and have some variety over there, I feel like it could be easy S tier.
Okay, fair enough. We're gonna keep it as an A tier for now, because you talked about some shortcomings. But we move along to one of my new favorites in the melee department, and that is Fury Warrior. Now, Fury Warrior, as opposed to ARMS, is not that methodical. It's not easy, don't get me wrong. Now, after Flame did his research for the guide and I watched the priority and rotation and open, I was like, wait a minute. Wasn't this supposed to be just smash whatever's available? No. So I love that about it because, the impression of Fury Warriors over time, the community perception at least, was that, this spec is button smashing all day long. And
it is very fluid, but if you really want to optimize your damage, there's a lot of, because probably maybe the downside or the upside of having so many systems. To optimize all of them individually, you have a lot of choices that can end up boosting your damage by quite a bit, and having to think about all of that while also
shut up, Cloud.
Creative Cloud. Having to think about all of that while also playing a very fluid spec is very rewarding.
It's smooth. For me, Fury is S tier. What about you?
It would have been about A tier for me.
Okay, so definitely an S tier here. I'm having fun. So if it's A tier for you and S tier for me, we can go for the margin and put it on.
It's still nice. It's fine. It's a spec that a lot of people can consider.
I mean, 1 minute Blaze Storm. It's a beautiful thing. There's no way around it. It smashes a lot. It's super smooth. And I just love a spec who has a 1 minute bursty cooldown available. That's it. Okay, Havoc Demon Hunter. Now, is this an S tier for you or not?
It's very close this year. It's definitely higher for me than Frost Decay. It's just a really good spec. I think they're doing really well with Havoc Demon Hunter Dispatch, making Essence Break one of the most difficult openers to do on any melee spec that I've played so far.
Would you have
It's a
expected
lot.
that?
It's a lot. I've never expected Havoc to become one of the more complicated melee specs to pull off.
How about that, huh?
properly.
I'm back.
You have different
Times
kinds of builds,
change.
different kind of legendaries. You have at least 2 builds, which is a big plus in my book. And they're all viable in pretty much all encounters. Momentum is still a thing, which is.
Hell yeah.
I mean, I cannot be honest with myself and not put Havoc in S tier.
Okay, whoa. Didn't expect that, but sure. Okay, now let's talk about Outlaw Rogue for a second. So here's the thing: I love all the Rogue specs. Okay, they have different values in different departments. Okay, now Outlaw for me is more or less a piano spec. It is fun. You have a lot of APM for that motherfucker. Let me tell you, it's just. I would have been more happy with Outlaw because, or for the reasoning of it being a piano spec, if it had a little bit more in depth to it. But it's basically, this is a pure case where you have multiple buttons and things to maintain, and you just press them when they're available, more or less. Okay, and I'm talking me 15s to 17s, no problemo. That being said, it is a bit chaotic, and out of all of the 3 specs, I think Outlaw is the least favorite for me. So it does perform well. It does damage. I mean, I think it's after sub, it's up there, in all big keys and whatever. And I have to say this: I was a huge fan of the old Combat Rogue. I never really was into the whole pirating thing. I have to put this in because of class fantasy or whatever. I understand the logic why they changed it, from combat to outlaw to make like distinctions between them and whatever. But for me, outlaw at this point, with all due love, it's gonna be a C tier. Now I don't know if you have something.
Nah,
to,
go for it, man. You have full reign on the rogue.
Yeah,
I haven't played the rogue right now. I actually kind of like the piratey theme of outlaw. I felt it was a little bit fresh for rogue, because outlaw felt just a weird. Combat felt a weird mash between rogue and fury warrior. But having it this way is, for me, class fantasy wise, is nice. I like the fact that they added Dreadblades, although they should probably buff that eventually. I know that they're addressing it in 9.5.
Yeah, they're addressing it. Yeah,
I don't know if that's enough to bring it back into the fold. Every expansion or every major patch, they're addressing the throw the die mechanic thing, the roll the dice.
Roll the dice, yeah.
Even better and better.
Roll the bones.
Roll the bones, god damn it. Where it's way different than what it was in WoD and Legion pre.
Oh yeah, it's much better now, yeah.
So I feel like Outlaw is going really good places. I haven't actually delved into the Shadowlands playstyle for all the piano stuff as well, but Outlaw would have been normally like a B tier-ish for me, but I guess C tier might be better.
It's it's just the C tier doesn't mean it's shit. It's our opinion. And my experience mostly on playing it. I played it a lot last season. I got my KSM with it. To be fair, but it was I played it because Sub and Assassination could just not deliver. What Outlaw delivered. Okay, now let's move along to the Red Paladin. No questions asked.
Okay, now Sub Rogue.
It's directly S tier for me, and I'm hoping for you too, because you did play Red Paladin.
It's high. I wouldn't put it in S tier, but I'm gonna let you put it.
Listen,
I cannot take it away, man. I cannot.
Come on, man. This is my true love.
It's the thing is with Red for me, it does a lot of things right, but it still has glaring weaknesses that I don't feel like they're addressing. It feels like Red is Red can be one of the most interesting melees to play. It feels like the content is not necessarily catered to it, or at least
not all the time.
I felt it's very satisfying to play Final Reckoning, and Execution Sentence is one of the most satisfying single target playstyles that I have played.
And Divine Toll, man, and the new legendary from the Kyrian. Now you can basically line up everything. It's amazing. So here's what it is. Red Paladin, first of all, in terms of like class fantasy and mechanics and whatever, it's 100% there. You feel you are a paladin just because of the spells, how it looks, how it sounds. Everything is there. I recently picked it up again, and I fell in love once again, because it is my true love. Now, in terms of like what you were saying, the weaknesses are still there, no doubt. It's hard to maintain DPS if you're gonna go in that department outside of the 1 minute burst. It can remind you of a fire mage from time to time, really huge burst.
In wings, yeah, that was probably would have put red in A tier for me. Kind of similar to Frost Decay. Once you have your cooldowns, you really feel, oh my god, this is such a cool moment. And it's maybe that there is just a predominant spec design where they have okay cooldowns are really cool, but you're really boring outside.
Yeah, there's secrets to maintaining, I would say, but not as, compared to other melees. But that being said, it's 100% a fun spec to play, really useful. And I don't know, man, it's there. It's S tier for sure. I cannot recommend playing red enough in any type of content. Now, Sub Rogue, another S tier for me. I'm sorry, Flame, there's nothing you can see here.
I would always like the fancy of Sub more than Outlaw anyway.
So, talking about Sub Rogue, this is one of those specs that we have mentioned multiple times in tier lists and stuff. So, it's not easy to pull off. For a lot of people, it might be weird because you have to learn how to line up a lot of the things, especially now with Flagellation from Ventier, with the legendary Obedience. You have to make sure you line up your symbols of that with that and Shadow Dance, and make sure you put in many more finishers as possible into the flag window to reduce its cooldown, while also maintaining Slice and Dance, which I sometimes don't do. I'm sorry. But and Rupture too. It's fun to have access to your burst really fast, and this is how you do it. Basically, there's mechanics to Sub Rogue where you basically reduce your Shadow Dance, and there's different ways you can approach that. That being said, it delivers high damage, especially single target, and this is a big misconception about it. It can do amazing in keys only on 4+ targets. If you have a Sub Rogue, if you're a tank and you play with a Sub Rogue and he does low damage, you might look at the way because Sub Rogue cleave damage is non-existent. It's shit. So in order for a Sub Rogue to do cleave damage, not even competitively, right? So it has to go into Shadow Dance and symbols. And if this list is 3 targets, you have to go on each of them, put Rupture on each of them, and then choose one and do single target on it. Or if you can Fan of Knives, but I'm not going to go into geeking out of it. So Sub Rogues are 100% S tier.
More targets, just bigger.
It's because of the buffs to Fan of Knives and having the Shuriken Tornado talented. It can do really well on 4+ targets mainly. But that being said, it's great to play. It's fluid, it's fast, it's up there, and it delivers. So definitely S tier. And another S tier, I'm guessing, because it's Survival Hunter, baby.
It's way up there. I feel like Survival is actually getting a lot of performance, way more than I personally expected in this patch. Although it dropped off a little bit in the rankings of the raid, probably because people are just gearing a lot more, and they're just finding ways to deal with at least the AoE fights a little bit better. Yeah. Survival is a beast in AoE.
Oh my god, and, it's ridiculous. Nobody can beat you on that shit.
It's really good, and there's a lot of cool things that you can optimize. Talking with Marcin about assassination in AoE, about other difficult specs like Shadow Priest as well, because I'm also playing Shadow Priest. Survival is not necessarily as complex in understanding how to do AoE. It's just maybe a little bit trickier to use because you're playing essentially with a very strict global intensive spec that you're working around Carve in AoE, and the way you're optimizing your downtime on Carve is kind of what I feel influences your damage to the most, and that can change based on pack to pack, based on what gear you have, based on what talents you have.
It doesn't need to be complicated, man. It just delivers.
It's really good. It's people don't give it enough credit, and I'm fine with it because I don't want Blizzard devs to I'm just doing a little bit too much damage.
Year of the Spear, no doubt, at least in Mythic Plus, but you're doing quite all right in raids as well, man. Top 3 DPS always, so no problem.
It's mostly shards, to be honest.
It's all good, man. It's all good. But S tier, 100%. It's also fantasy mechanics, rotation.
I mean, it's the hunter. It's the one in the savannah with the fucking spear going to hunt fucking lions as the survival hunter.
Yeah, and pumas. And now going into the Unholy Death Knight, which you have played.
Unholy Death Knight again. They really did really cool with it with Unholy Blight and Shadowlands. For me, it's still an A tier. It's similar to Frost Decay.
But is it in front?
I think it's a little bit in front. Unholy Decay feels like it's
I cannot put a little bit.
Just okay, pull it fully in front. That's fine. Unholy Decay is nice. I feel like right now that Unholy Decay can use Clawing Shadows makes it feel like the high movement fights are a little bit less impactful. I like that it's another way cooldown based spec, but you have way more cooldowns. You can either just align all of them or play around each one, and that's actually pretty interesting. The attention that they added to Unholy can be added to Frost. Frost feels a little bit with like big moments, like you drop Froststorm's Fury. Unholy has all of the moments making you rise on the meters, so you don't really know exactly like which one is amazing. I kind of don't like the fact that they really changed the bursting swords mechanic from BFA, because that felt really cool to pull off, just like exploding everything.
Yeah, that was. I remember that. That was awesome, dude.
And they didn't really address festering wounds too much, which is probably what's keeping it for being an S tier for me. Because festering wounds are still kind of like a core, or at least supposedly a core mechanic of Unholy, so it's just a little bit funky, but it's solid A tier, I can definitely see it becoming S tier eventually.
No, it's there, and we'll keep it that way, because until some more love goes to both these specs, Frost and Unholy. A tier is no sneeze, man. Don't think like only S tier matters. Like as Flame said, S tier is basically what we will probably main at some point. Now let's go to the last melee spec on the charts here, and that is the Windwalker Monk. And Windwalker has been an A tier spec, I would say S tier spec, in both meta, in at least in Castle Nathria, and in our hearts for a long time.
I think right now it's the best spec, possibly best spec in the raid, if not definitely the best melee. Last I checked, I think I checked a few days ago.
But yeah, but again, this is one example of we're not looking at the meta or logs or anything, okay? We have like ranked Windwalker monks in terms of like fun tier list all the time into S tier, just because we both love the spec, how it plays, its mechanics, everything. And it's amazing. The fact that it also has really good damage, and we can touch on the
buffs to spinning crane kick.
they're buffing spinning crane kick again, man. So that's like the staple of it in dungeons. It's ridiculous how much damage it can do. And
you talk about my survival, man, but you haven't seen the spinning crane kick. Jesus.
I've seen. I mean, this is it. I also have my monk. It's not ready. Obviously, I need to get a lot more things to it. But it feels like, I don't know, there's a couple of bugs with spinning kick also that makes it more like it's a mess over there. Regardless,
they're probably working on fixing the bugs, which is I imagine why they're buffing.
They're buffing it, yeah. Probably getting into that. But that being said, in terms of like single target, traditionally Windwalkers didn't really have much single target, like pure, and it was a bit of an issue for it. That didn't really cut off of it the gameplay and the fun play style overall for it. It's smooth, it's fast. The thing about pressing a different ability all the time and not repeating it, and dude, if you go onto the Peak of Serenity website and we look at Windwalker and see the work Babylonius has done there, and how much you can optimize the spec is unbelievable. It's worthy of an S tier for sure, and definitely something we would recommend for you to play, or at least give it a go, and definitely something that we would main in the near future. So, that being said, this is the final image. Look at the amount of S tiers.
What a sausage in S tier, man. It's like all of them.
Yeah, it's a big schlong of S tiers here, and we love it, right? We can see ours, we can see Windwalker, a couple of meta specs here, but again, guys, it's not about the meta here. Fuck the meta. It's about how fun are these specs, and, taking into account everything, right? The class find.
Let's see what she says about Mooncase.
Keep pressing the attack.
What is this?
wonder if it really would be that hard to just give you like an action bar with the borrowed power. I mean, would that really be that difficult to code? Because the code was already there once. I mean, I guess the problem is that not only did you have borrowed power, but they always rework so much stuff as well. I wonder why they always do that. That is like one of those questions that I never really understand. Like, why do they always rework classes so much? Because like look at Moonkin. If you look at the past couple of expansions, Moonkin changed so much all the time. And I really don't understand why. Why does it always have to change so much? To keep the game fresh, I assume. But do people want that? Like, is that actually something people? Because we already get so much stuff because of borrowed power, right? Like the way I see it is that you play a spec, and each expansion has so much borrowed power that the spec automatically changes a lot in itself, just through borrowed power, right? Why does the base of the class also need to change that much? Like, I personally wouldn't mind if Moonkin just stays the way it is, and then the borrowed power changes. Because then you automatically change the way you play, or why not just give us new talents every time or something? Like, they can just give us a couple of new abilities. That's how Final Fantasy does it, right? In Final Fantasy, each expansion gives you like new abilities, like 1 or 2 new abilities or something, that changes your rotation a bit, and that's it. And in WoW, you could do the same, where you just add a few new abilities and borrowed power, right? So you lose your old borrowed power, you get some new base abilities, and then you get new borrowed power. That's gonna change the spec already by quite a lot. So I don't understand why you always have to like remake the complete like talent tree or something. Final Fantasy also removes abilities a lot and reworks classes all the time. Yes, but not to the same extent as it happens in WoW. It's not as completely like, if I think about Moonkin, if I compare Moonkin to like MOP, for example, it's so different. It's like it's not even the same spec anymore. In MOP, Moonkin was so different, you could call it a different spec even. It was inherently different. Everything about it was different. So it's not just like a few changes here and there. It's like they're just reworking everything. It's so weird.
No way.
BFA felt like Legion Part 2 because they didn't change anything. Wait, what?
Why
They
did that
changed
just
so
happen?
much in BFA though. I really liked the way Moonkin worked in Legion, and then in BFA I hated it. The biggest reason I think why a lot of people like Legion Moonkin so much was because the astral power generation was really high. And it scaled really well. And then they nerfed it in BFA. So, and they kept it this way. In BFA and in Shadowlands, we barely generate any astral power. And it's just such, I just don't like it. Like, it just feels so much boring. It's so much more boring if you generate very little astral power, because then you're just sitting here spamming like fillers. You know, you're just like rough, or like starfire. You know, because you literally don't have enough astral power to use it on spenders. And then on top of that, starfall cannot be stacked. So if you're in an AOE situation and you already have starfall up, then you're not even using astral power. Like, then it's not even worth it. Then you're just sitting there overcapping your astral power. It's like, okay, great. Like, it just feels bad. If you're not a fan of the base version of Moonkin now, wouldn't you then be for changing the base class in the next expansion? Which goes against what you said a few minutes ago about not changing base classes. Yeah, so when I say that they shouldn't change the base class, then I'm saying they should stick to a version that people liked. Of course, if there's a version of a spec that no one likes and people don't like it, then yeah, I agree that it should be changed. But a lot of the time, they can change it in a way without completely reworking it. Like, for example, the way Moonkin is now, in my opinion, it could be changed in a way that is not completely reworking it, but it's gonna be improving fun a lot. Like, for example, Starfall right now is like this huge radius around us, and I think I mean that's cool. People like that. The problem is
So weird.
Starfall cannot be stacked, and that's a problem. So if you make Starfall stackable, then that would be a change that is not super invasive, in my opinion. Like, it's not gonna completely rework the class. You just make Starfall stack, like, so you can have multiple Starfalls up at the same time. And then you increase the Astra power generation somehow. They could just do that by buffing shooting stars, which is a passive, right? In my opinion, they can change Moonkin in a way that is not like a complete rework. Just change the existing spells in a way that it's more enjoyable to play. The reason why I don't like current Moonkin is not because I completely dislike everything about it. I just dislike some parts of it because of like the way its tuning works. So for example, if Starfall would be stackable, if we would have more Astra power generation, if our dots would be more meaningful, if our Star Search wouldn't buff our Eclipse. You know, so, like some of these changes would make it more enjoyable to me, and it wouldn't like completely change the way the class works. The big issue is that what people say they like the best is usually the big dam, which is why when Max did the survey, everyone just picked when their class was up here. I mean, maybe that is true for most people, but I think I personally can look at it pretty objectively. No copium. I'm pretty sure that when I think about Moonkin, I can think about it in an objective way without being blinded by the damage. I think I can say that. Because, I mean, at the moment, Moonkin is really good, right? But I still don't like the way Moonkin plays. Right? And I think a lot of people maybe agree with this statement even. Like, a lot of Moonkin players maybe agree that Moonkin is not so fun right now, even though it does big damage. Right? Delete Eclipse again. Yeah. Eclipse is definitely, like, I don't necessarily dislike Eclipse as a whole. I don't think it's that bad. The problem is the way Star Search interacts with it is bad, in my opinion. Like, I think Star Search should not be buffing our Eclipse. Because that's just weird. That creates a really weird gameplay, in my opinion. For example, the Moonkin Theory Crafters, they're really, like, good. Probably one of the best theory crafters of any spec in the game. And they actually always provide really, like, constructive feedback posts during beta about the actual issues that they think the spec has. No? Like about actual, not about like tuning issues. They don't say, oh, this doesn't enough damage or this doesn't enough damage, but they're actually like giving feedback on what feels bad. For example, they gave feedback about Starfall not stacking being bad. Like they already wrote that in a like a letter to Blizzard before Shadowlands even came out. Like before Shadowlands came out, they wrote this letter and they're like, not stackable Starfall bad. Bad astral power generation bad. You know, like they wrote all of this down in like a really big constructive letter with like graphs and everything. Like it was really well done. But then, you know, nothing came of it. So in my opinion, it's like maybe they should be listening to those people, you know? Because I understand that they're not listening to the whole community as a whole, because as you said, a lot of people's opinions is tainted by damage. So sometimes people are just like, oh, this class does a lot of damage, so it's the best at the moment, right? But the theory crafters that really logically and constructively think about their spec and give like huge feedback posts, maybe those are the people that they should be listening to, right? Like if a death walks up to one of the Moonkin theory crafters and says, hey, could you give me some feedback about Moonkin? Then they will be so happy to provide like literally like pages and pages of feedback. Like they would do that for free without anything. And then, if the devs are using that or not, I mean, that's up to them, obviously, right? But just looking at it and thinking about the feedback might just, like that would be enough, in my opinion. But then you run into the issue that the class is only going into the direction the theory crafters would want. Then it's better to ask no one in the community than to ask some. I mean, no, I disagree. Because I think when it comes to gameplay, there's a collective understanding between enjoyment of something. I'm explaining this weird. But if a class feels smooth, that's the word people always say. Either something feels clunky or something feels smooth, right? And this smoothness is something that is like, it's not like a subjective thing. It's almost like objectively correct among like the whole player base or the majority of the player base, right? For example, something like Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter feels smooth, right? And a lot of people agree. It's like, oh, Demon Hunter, that feels so smooth, like blah, 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 right? And there's a reason behind that. And it's literally just something that can be, that one person can figure out that is a theory crafter that knows a lot about the class. Right? Going back to Moonkin, for example. I said earlier that it feels bad that we don't generate a lot of astral power. Because what happens if we don't generate a lot of astral power is we have to spam a lot of our fillers, which is Wrath and Starfire. And I think everyone collectively agrees that standing still and spamming a filler is bad gameplay. Like, that's just not fun to anyone, right? Or to very few people. Like, if you have to stand still and you just like Wrath, like that just feels bad. And I think that is like a collective, like I think people agree on this, right? Most people. So at that point, you could say that if the astral power generation increases, like the passive astral power generation, then that would solve that issue that you have to stand still and cast a lot of fillers. And you're replacing some of those fillers with spenders. Like, it's a lot more fun to cast Star Surge than it is to cast Wrath. And I think that's like a, I think everyone agrees with this opinion. It's a lot more fun to spam Starfall than it is to spam Starfire, right? And that's just a thing, right? And I'm pretty sure that the theory crafters are the best at identifying the issue, because a lot of the player base sometimes doesn't understand necessarily why the class doesn't feel fun. Because they're not so knowledgeable about how everything interacts with each other, right? Like a player that is on the more casual side maybe starts playing a spec, and then they're like, I don't really like this spec. But if you ask them exactly why, then they maybe cannot pinpoint it. They maybe not, maybe they're like, I don't really know, like it just doesn't feel good, They maybe don't necessarily understand all the like connections between the abilities and how the class works, and therefore they don't necessarily understand why exactly they don't like playing it. But a theory crafter, they will know everything about the class and how everything like interacts with each other, and then they will understand why something doesn't feel as fun or as smooth, right? In my opinion. For example, the Shadow community is rather split for having the old Void form and current Void form. The theory crafters prefer the old Void form, but the player base likes the new Void form due to it being... You're misunderstanding me, because you're talking about personal preference, about a working system. Like, clearly Void form in its current form is not inherently bad, right? Like, it's not clunky. And just because someone prefers the old version doesn't mean, like, that's just a personal preference thing that the dev is gonna decide. The feedback of the theory crafter is not gonna help. Like, when I say that the theory crafter should give feedback, then it shouldn't be a personal preference feedback, but rather a function of the class feedback.
Why is that happening?
For example, the thing with Moonkin,
no sense.
generating more astral power and casting more spenders, that's not a personal preference thing. That is literally a functionality of the class thing, right? The class feels bad because you're spamming too many fillers, right? It's not that people literally like spamming fillers. It's not a personal preference question. It's literally just literally everyone hates this question. Make it different. You know what I mean? It's not a red or blue color kind of choice. That it's like a 50-50 split in preference. It's literally just like, this feels horrible, this feels good, right? And in the end, it's always gonna be the devs that decide anyway. I am not saying that a dev should listen to a theory crafter and then do exactly what they say. That's obviously not gonna happen. All I'm asking is that they listen to what the theory crafters say and then maybe, you know, do some of the stuff that they think makes sense. Because if a theory crafter gives feedback about a spec, then they will give proper feedback that will literally be like listed and explained exactly so the dev understands what they mean. If a random person of the community gives feedback, they're gonna be like, this sucks. And the dev is gonna be like, oh well, okay. But if a theory crafter gives feedback that is exactly explained and detailed, then maybe the dev thinks about it in a different way all of a sudden and be like, oh, wait, you are right, this does make sense, you know? And then if the dev decides to change it or to take the feedback into account or not, that is a different kind of story. That's up to the dev to decide, right? Like the developer is not gonna take the feedback of a theory crafter and apply exactly that to the class. But maybe they take some stuff and some they don't take, and whatever. They obviously have their own idea on how the spec should work. But getting really good feedback sometimes I just feel like that the developers don't actually, like they don't have, obviously they're not gonna have like bad intent. Like a developer is not gonna sit here and be like, I want this class to feel bad.
Oh my god, why?
Right? Like they don't have bad intent. They want the class to feel good. They don't intentionally make something bad.
Why is this happening?
But maybe sometimes they just don't think of something, or they don't think of a solution to the problem. Because that's just that's normal, right? Maybe there's a solution to the problem, or the cause of the problem that they don't really identify, but the theory crafters do. Like, what if the theory crafters identify, you know what? If we could change this to interact this way instead of this way, then maybe it would feel better. And maybe the developer didn't actually think about that. Maybe they didn't have that idea. And then when they read the feedback, they're like, oh, wait, that is an interesting idea. You know, like, that's what I mean. Like, they should just be, like, getting ideas from the theory crafters. Because clearly the theory crafters have so much knowledge and so much, like, detailed opinions about a spec that it can only be helpful. Like, it cannot be bad, right? It can only help. And if they don't take any feedback, well, then they don't. They don't have to. In this case, isn't the preference actually less powerful spenders that we spend more often versus more powerful spenders that we spend less often as an example? Yes. Yes. I want my spenders to be less powerful, but I cast them more often, yes. That is what I want to do. I mean, you could argue that that is a personal preference thing, right? You could argue that some people maybe like using spenders less often, but for them to do more damage, right? I mean, I see that being an opinion. I totally see people saying that. But then your fillers would have to be more interesting. You cannot have boring fillers and spenders that you barely ever use. Like that's where the disconnect is, right? If you play a class that has like really big powerful spenders that are not casted really often, then your fillers need to be interesting, right? If you cast spenders more often and they're less powerful, then it's okay if your fillers are more boring, right? Like if your fillers are boring, then in return your spenders need to be casted more often. But you cannot have boring fillers.
The Wi-Fi is out.
Oh my god!
Oh my word!
Oh my god!
How is this even family therapy if Dad's not invited and Grandpa won't come?
Uh-oh, that's enough.
And at the same time, you have spenders that are barely casted. Like that's like that's the worst combination of both. It needs to be one or the other, right? Fillers are supposed to be boring, hence the name filler. No, fillers don't have to be boring. That's a big misconception. Fillers don't have to be boring. They can have an interesting way of how they work. A boring filler is spamming the same button over and over and over and over and over. That's boring, right? An interesting filler could be if there's like some sort of rotation with your filler spells. Let's say you have like 3 or 4 filler spells and you have to decide on what you cast depending on your resource, right? Or maybe there's procs. Like maybe one filler procs another filler, and then I don't know.
Ow.
Like there has to be some sort of interaction between the fillers that make it more interesting, and not just mindlessly press one button. I mean, Moonkin had interesting fillers in the past. Or maybe, I mean, not yeah, we did. I mean, Moonkin had decently interesting fillers in the past. It was never like super intricate, but it was more interesting than it is nowadays, right? Like Final Fantasy Red Mage rotation. Yes. Final Fantasy Red Mage kind of has, yeah, I guess it's a good example. Like their filler abilities are not so boring that they would be mindless. Like it's basically your base rotation. Like your base rotation as a Red Mage in Final Fantasy. You can compare it to Moonkin. Imagine Moonkin would have lunar astral power and solar astral power. Okay? And imagine my solar wrath would give me solar astral power, and my lunar strike would give me lunar astral power. And the way Red Mage works in Final Fantasy is that you want to keep your astral power or your mana at like somewhat balanced level. That's the way that job works. And that would make it somewhat interesting, right? Because then you have your lunar astral power and you have your solar astral power, and you need to look at both. And you have to like figure out which filler that you should be casting to make sure that it stays balanced, and so on, right? Like it's just an example, right? I mean, for example, the old Affliction Warlock as well. I thought that was pretty interesting. It wasn't like super difficult. If you think about Affliction Warlock before 9.1, I thought that was kind of cool. Like you had your filler spells was just like a huge amount of dots, which is not like super interesting, but at least it's like something that you have to pay attention to, right? It has to be like not so mindless. The way Affliction Warlock worked in before 9.1 was you just had like a huge dot line, and you had to keep up your dots. That's it. Like it wasn't incredibly complicated. But it made you at least think about it a bit more. Like you had to pay attention to your dots and when they're gonna run out, right? And you have to keep a look at your like shard generation. If the filler becomes so boring that you never even have to pay attention to it, or like just glance at it and you're done, then that's when it becomes boring, right? Unfortunately, making something interesting usually translates to make it powerful. I disagree. If your fillers are too powerful, no. It doesn't have to be powerful, just interesting. I don't think that's the same. I don't think interesting needs to be powerful. I completely disagree with you. Fillers being interesting doesn't need to mean that they do a lot of damage. Like for example, when I talked about Affliction Warlock just now, right? Before 9.1, I thought Affliction Warlock has like a decent filler rotation. And by filler rotation, I just basically meant keeping up all of your dots. That's the filler rotation, right? And I thought that was decently interesting because you had to keep track of a bunch of different timers. So you had to look at this dot's timer, and this timer, and this timer, and this timer. So there's like a bunch of different things you had to pay attention to, and then you refreshed it. It wasn't like incredibly complicated, which it shouldn't be. Your filler rotation shouldn't be like super complicated, but it should be so complicated that you at least have to pay a little bit attention to it. That is what I mean. It doesn't have to be doing a lot of damage at all. Fillers that are boring or things that you mindlessly press without really looking at it. For example, the way the Moonkin fillers work right now. Moonkin is so incredibly boring filler-wise. It's not even funny. Like, it's actually so boring. Like, what do you do as a Moonkin? What is your filler rotation? If you're in Lunar Eclipse, you press Starfire. If you're in Solar Eclipse, you press Solar Wrath. That's it. That's your filler rotation. Like, that is so boring. You know? What I mean? Like, you don't have to pay attention to anything. The only thing you have to pay attention to is which eclipse you're in. Which, I mean, like, that's not a difficult thing. That's literally just like, oh, I'm looking at my bar. It is blue, I'm casting blue spell. It's yellow, I cast yellow spell. Like, it doesn't have any intricacies that makes you pay attention to it more, you know? Of course, I also have to keep my dots up, but that's not like... Yeah, I only have 2 dots, so it's not a big deal. So the filler rotation of a Moonkin is this, yeah? Okay, so I'm gonna enter my Eclipse now with 2 Starfires, and then I cast Wrath. I'm only doing filler rotation now, yeah? Okay, this is it, yeah? This is my filler rotation. Okay, oh, my dot's running out, so I'm gonna press my dots. Oh no. Then I just keep casting filler. Like, oh, I enter Lunar Eclipse. Now I cast the other spell for an eternity. You know, like, this is it. This is the whole filler rotation. And that is obviously boring. And I think a lot of people can agree with this, right? That it's boring. So how do you fix this? In my opinion, there's 2 ways on how you can fix this. And I talked about this earlier already. Number 1, you make the Astra power, like, you make us generate more Astra power, so we are able to use more spenders, right? Because spenders will make it more interesting because you have to think about when to use them and stuff, right? So by giving us more Astra power generation, we have to think about our spenders more, automatically making fillers less casted and therefore less important. The less often you have to cast fillers, the less important it is for the fillers to actually be interesting, right? And I think that's how melee classes work generally in WoW. The way melee classes work is that usually you use spenders a lot more. Almost every single melee class uses spenders more. And therefore the filler spells are not that important. Right? So that's how you could fix it one way. Give us more Astral Power so we can spend more use more spenders. Or you keep the Astral Power generation the way it is, but you make our filler cast more interesting in some way. Right? And I mean, there's obviously multiple ways on how you could make the filler spells more interesting. You could make it proc or something. So let's say, for example, my Starfire has a chance to make my Wrath something. Or you could say that when I'm in Solar Eclipse, then I have a chance to randomly go into Lunar Eclipse by doing something. You know what I mean? Just something to make it more interesting. So maybe I could, like, if I cast a combination of spells, then I'm gonna go from Lunar Eclipse to Solar, or whatever. Or I can extend my something, somehow. You know, like, I don't know what they could, like, there's a bunch of things they could do, right? Your actions in any rotation should feel like the payoff is worth it. Nobody wants to have lots of actions and not feel like there's a reward at the end. I think if fillers are more mundane, it's okay if the payoff ability is worth it. Generally speaking, I think that is how MMO psychology works. Well, no, not necessarily. Like, I think it's actually the opposite. I think it's the complete opposite. If your fillers are mundane, boring, then I think you should be able to use your spenders more often, even if they do less damage, right? Because then you can forget about the fact that your fillers are boring, because you don't it's not the biggest part of your rotation. And the thing you're talking about with payoff, like, if my filler spells are, like, complex to use, but they don't do a lot of damage, I'm still gonna be happy because I get a big payoff at the end, right? Like, my filler spells do not need to do a lot of damage as long as I get a big payoff at the end. I don't think it needs to be directly correlated to the filler spells doing damage. Like, I don't need my Wrath to hit for, like, 1,000,000 damage just because it's a bit more complicated to, like, do my filler rotation. As long as I get a big payoff from the spender that I can use afterwards. Like, from the end of my rotation. Basically, if you turn off numbers, does your rotation still feel good? That's good to stun. Yeah, yes, exactly. Exactly. If you don't look at your numbers at all, do you still have fun pressing your rotation? That would be perfect, right?
Pretty much nailed every corner of Fury and are looking to get the next boost in your damage. But again,
Huh. Interesting. Ooh. Okay.
Get you. I also like to min-max and put my best foot forward when joining a group. So let's see the options. If you are starting out your Furious journeys and your go-to is raiding, Venthyr will be ideal. Condemned is incredibly strong in raids for a few reasons. You get to use it at the beginning of the fight when your group will most of the time use Bloodlust, so the value is pretty high. And also execute phases are usually the most important time to deal a lot of damage, hence Condemned will shine. But, and this is a big but, not that one. The less the boss will spend in those condemned windows, the worse Venthyr will become. When your raid is super geared, the overall DPS will be higher, hence the boss HP will drop quicker, making the condemned windows shorter.
What?
Not to mention, Sylvanas does not have an execute phase, and she is the last boss of the raid. That's when you are super geared though. All of this is important since you will want to play with Venthyr Legendary that makes Condemned extend Recklessness, making the amount of time you can cast it even more important. Until then, feel free to play Nadia, building her up with the Dauntless Duelist as the important conduit to get. That, on top of Thrill Seeker, will make your single target shine and smack the boss silly. Not to mention that when you reach Renown 55, you get Fatal Flaw, granting you 20% crit or verse, so it's pretty nice. For AoE scenario,
Oh, fuck. Let's see what we got here.
Because previously it was just pedal to the floor, run as much haste as you need to know about playing Holy Paladin in 9.1 Mythic Plus. This video is going to be basic and mostly just cover my choices and why I do what I do, but I'll also include a lot of stuff I've learned pushing high keys as a Paladin over the first season. And this way, I hope it's going to be helpful for those who are picking up the spec for the first time, as also people who are returning and just trying to figure out what's going on with the patch. I also make tons of stuff like other video reviews for other classes, as well as stream high keys, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also go follow my Twitch. Links for that, as well as the weak auras and UI stuff and everything that you'll see, is going to be in the description of the video. Let's get started. hpally is a very high DPS melee healer. It is very fun in my opinion because most of the abilities that you use are going to be instant cast, so you don't have to hard cast at all. So it feels very mobile, although you're tied into melee. Almost your entire rotation is going to involve not hard casting at all, which to me is pretty enjoyable and pretty fun. It is considered a very, very strong healer for both Mythic Plus and Raid right now because it has all the toolkits it needs to be a good healer, as well as very solid damage and also very good utility and an immunity. It did receive 3 separate changes in 9.1, the first one being a pretty significant damage nerf in the magnitude of like 15 to 18%. This was definitely needed, and even with the nerf, I still feel like it's going to be pretty good. Crusader's Might was also nerfed. This was a go-to talent in the row. I think in Mythic Plus, you'll still be running Crusader's Might. However, it is worth experimenting with Bestow Faith and Light's Hammer, especially in Raid. The last one is they've increased the mana cost on some abilities, namely Holy Shock and Crusader Strike. These won't affect your gameplay too much. However, we're going to need to maybe rein in on the haste a little bit because previously it was just pedal to the floor, run as much haste as you can. But now if you hit a certain level, you're going to run out of mana. Let's go through the checklist. First, we'll talk about race. It doesn't really matter what race you play. If you want to play a race, just play it. In Mythic Plus, I would say Dwarf is probably the most useful. Either Dwarf or Dark Iron, and Blood Elf for Horde, just because you get some usage out of those abilities against certain things. But ultimately, you don't really have that much of a choice as a Paladin anyway. For stats, as I mentioned, haste is going to be a really solid stat. Our goal is to get to about 25 to 30% haste. However, if you go too high, you're going to find that you're going to start running out of mana. So I would be careful going too high. And in general, the idea is going to be get to 25 to 30% haste, then just go towards crit and verse. Crit and verse are better than mastery, specifically because mastery doesn't help with your damage. Healing-wise, mastery is great, but as a paladin, part of what you bring is that you bring that passive damage that healers like maybe Holy Priest or Resto Druid don't necessarily have. And doubling down and doing more damage is going to make you stand out and, accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish as a paladin. For trinkets, we have a lot of options. A safe go-to is always Changeling. Changeling is a nice stat proc and is just very high value, good uptime, and is something that you can easily get your hands on from Miss. The PvP trinkets, both the haste with the int proc and the on-use int one, are both pretty good. They are nerfed in PvE now, however, with Paladin, they're still pretty solid trinkets. There's also 2 new trinkets. I don't have one. One of them is called the Tome of Insight. It's from doing Korthia stuff. It's just sort of a random drop. You can buy it from the chests. Another one is from Tazavesh. It is called the Healing Distributor. This is a beast in raid right now, even at a lower item level, because it gives you both haste and healing. However, I'm not sure how it's going to be in 5-man, so this is something that you want to get your hands on and kind of try it out. It'll be a good filler trinket, and it'll be easy to farm early on.
Alright.
Grammarly helps make your writing clear and concise, no matter where you are. Compose a cover letter that stands out, thanks to flawless writing and compelling word choice. Inspire your team with a presentation free of errors in spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Impress your boss with a proposal that gets straight to the point. And be sure your writing comes across the way you intend. Download Grammarly today to review your writing before you hit send.
Other than that, basically you just want stats. If you can't get a hold of those, you can use an on-use trinket like Ruby or IQD. These are going to be good for your damage. You can use them during your Ashen and your Wings. However, they're going to be a little bit less consistent for healing, and they're not really going to help you in the spots that you struggle with. I think Tuft is also an okay trinket. This is from the previous raid, so don't worry about going back to get this if you feel like you, if you don't have it yet. However, this is a nice trinket. It can fill in for some single target healing. It's going to be a big damage loss, though, so it's not something that you want to generally use, like in every dungeon anymore. However, it might still be something that you want to use sometimes.
Why did that just happen?
For enchantments, we are using all the same stuff. We use Stamina and Avoidance or Leech on Cape. Either one's fine, I prefer Avoidance. 30 primary stats on Chest, 15 Intellect on Bracers. You can also get the reduced fall damage boots, which is nice. And for the rings and gems, as I said, we want to reach this haste breakpoint. I think by the end of the tier, once you're pretty well geared, you're not going to need any haste gems, and you're probably just going to be full gemmed verse. Although while you're gearing up, you may want to put some haste until your globals feel good. For consumables, we have Shadow Core Oil. This is just a small passive damage, as well as Spectral Flask. This is a very nice stat boost. For food, I use the Crown Roast for haste. Any of the food buffs are honestly fine. Preferably you use the Int Feast, but those are really expensive, so we don't always want to use those. We have Int Pots that we use during our Wings and Ashen, ideally. However, there's a lot of times in Mythic Plus where you'll need to use Invis Pots or Mana Pots or something like that, so don't worry about Int Potting all the time. It's just something you want to have occasionally for, like, maybe a really hard boss or something. Heavy Desolate Armor Kits are a nice free stamina increase. They last for multiple keys. And if you're really tryharding, you want to spend some money, you can buy Augment Runes. I don't always use these, but I like to have them on hand. You can get them from your mission table if you've been working on that. And it's good for, like, really, really hard key, or if you're, really trying to impress somebody. Now for Legendary, there's 3 main talking ones here. The first one is going to be Shock Barrier. This is your safe go-to pick for all forms of content. If you want something easy, you don't want to worry about it, you just want some passive healing, Shock Barrier is great. It'll be useful in Mythic Plus, useful in Raid, useful in PvP, it's just great everywhere. As a first craft, especially if you're a little nervous, if you'll be able to heal, you might be under geared, Shock Barrier is a good one. if you're ready to jump in, the full damage Venthyr mode in Mythic Plus, I think most people are going to be running Mad Paragon's Pursuit. This is going to be your highest DPS Lego because it's boosting your Hammer of Wrath, which also gets boosted by your Venthyr ability, Ashen Hollow. It extends your wings to make sure that your wings is lasting for almost the whole duration of your Ashen Hollow, which is really nice. Now, although this isn't a raid guide, I do want to mention Maraud's too. You may end up wanting to craft this early. I think the verdict still isn't out yet whether Shock Barrier or Maraud's is good. I think we might see some good Paladins running Maraud's in raid. However, I think Shock Barrier is a very reasonable alternative, and this will be much easier in terms of the rotation. However, Maraud's gives you a little bit more flexibility and gives you more spot healing in raid if you have those trouble players who tend to need a lot of healing. Next, we'll talk about Covenant. So it's a very hotly discussed topic, Kyrian versus Venthyr. I'd say that the common word on the streets is like, Venthyr is good for organized group, Kyrian's better for pugs. I don't fully subscribe to that. The way I see it is, if you're really comfortable as a healer, Venthyr is going to be better. If you're less comfortable, Kyrian's better. That's because the Venthyr ability, it's a very long cooldown, but if you know the right pulls to use it on, you drop that Ashen and then you're just blasting, then it'll eliminate a lot of the really hard pulls and bosses in a way that Divine Toll can't really. However, if you're less familiar and you need like more consistent healing, every minute, you're a little afraid of wasting your cooldowns and you're not really sure when you want to use it, then using Kyrian, you'll probably have better results. Ultimately, both are pretty good, Kyrian or Venthyr, so don't feel too bad if you feel, if you really want to use one or the other. I feel like, don't stress too much about this decision. Also, feel free to switch. I know it's kind of a pain to level up your campaign, but if you're playing one and you want to see how the other feels, don't feel too bad about leveling the other one up and switching. It gives you something to do if you're mainly focused on your hpally. So now we'll talk about soulbinds. I'm not going to go into specifics because we're all kind of figuring this out still, but the summary is that your potencies are not very good. And ideally what we want to do is we want to sub out a potency for a good passive on the tree. So the best example of that is this Theatar one right here. Instead of taking this path with the potency, we actually take this path with the finesse, and that gives us Wasteland Propriety, which gives you verse during your Ashen Hollow, which is better than any potency that you can get anyway. So not only do we get this finesse, but we get this strong ability. And this is why I think Theatar will probably be the go-to. However, we're not totally sure. Your best potency for either Kyrian or Venthyr is going to be your Covenant one, your Ashen Hollow, or your Divine Toll one. For Kyrian, I think Clea is the tree you want to go because Clea has a similar line like this where you can pass up a potency and you can take a permanent crit buff if you have nearby allies, which is very strong as well. So yeah, ideally we want only a 2 potency path that gives us like a really strong passive. For our second potency, I'm really not sure. I've been experimenting. Lately, I've just been going with Focus Light. I feel like this one's kind of underwhelming. However, none of the other options are that great either. If you wanted to try out some of these other ones, I don't think you'll be too bad off trying them. You're not losing too much with this one. As for finesse, there's actually 2 really, really good finesse. So Light's Barding basically doubles the duration of your Divine Steed. Divine Steed, aside from Dora's Shadows, is your only movement ability, really. And having a 6-second Divine Steed versus a 3-second is actually a huge difference. Another finesse that's really good is Echoing Blessings. This boosts your freedom and your sack. This is almost essentially a potency, making your sack better and your freedom better. Sack especially, it'll really help reducing tank damage or any sort of damage, if you use that sacrifice often. So these are both really, really strong. For endurance, none of them are that great. My go-to is always Shielding Words. Shielding Words, because you're using Wog so much, is going to essentially buff your Wog for AoE healing, because it's going to give you a little shield, give you a 24% boost on your Wog. And even on AoE healing scenarios, you're probably using Wog. So let's go over talents. For talents, Paladin has a really good tree, so there's lots of options. Don't feel too bad if you want to try something else. Again, just like the other things we talked about, a lot of this stuff is good. There's no like, oh, this is the right build, and don't run anything else or you're trolling. In the first row, I do prefer Crusader's Might still in Mythic Plus, even after the nerf. Although I think it is, I think these options may have some merit. We'll have to experiment, but before Crusader's Might was basically the only one you'd care about. In this row, Judgment of Light is going to be your highest healing option of the three. However, Saved by the Light could be used if you feel like your tank is struggling a lot. This is mainly concentrated on tank healing, whereas Judgment sort of spreads it out on everybody. Usually, Paladin, you could use the AoE healing, so that's why I like to take Judgment. On this row, depends on what you need. I would say Blinding Light is the most versatile.
Come on, bitch.
Fist of Justice and Repentance are also fine if you feel like you need either of these. In the 35 row, Unbreakable Spirit's great. You use these abilities often, as we'll talk about later in the rotation cooldown section. Holy Avenger is my go-to here for Venthyr. This is because it combines with Awakening. Anytime you're in trouble, Holy Avenger is sort of my in-between button. If I need emergency healing and I don't have wings active, that's because you get so much more holy power. So you pop your Holy Avenger, you're using abilities that generate holy power, and you have a much higher chance to proc wings during the duration of that Holy Avenger. And because I'm making a video, it's just not going to proc, even though I try and do it 90 million times. Okay, just pretend like I procced wings. Okay, there we go. Good.
Oh, yeah.
So, while you press your Holy Avenger, the chance of getting at least one wings proc is pretty high, and then that way you have HA and wings for an emergency moment, which will help a lot for your in-between healing. If you're Kyrian, you don't necessarily need that. You can sort of get away without running Holy Avenger, and that opens up the option for Seraphim or DP. Both of these options are going to be higher overall throughput than Holy Avenger will be, so experiment with both of these. I've been seeing a lot of Paladins playing Seraphim with Kyrian. However, I've mostly been Venthyr, so I haven't had much to say about this. I think Divine Purpose will definitely be easier, but with Kyrian, you're going to get so much holy power, that you may get very good use out of this, especially, let's say you want to use Divine Toll, right? Spend your holy power with Seraphim, then use your Divine Toll. You have a ton of crit and verse with it. The 12% mastery also goes a long way with helping your healing, because generally your mastery is going to be really low as well. And in the last row, the beacons, a lot of people get confused about this row. So think about it. Don't worry about Glimmer. Think about it in the way your beacon works. This is one big beacon. This is 2 medium beacons. And this is 5 spread out beacons, right? Or 4, I guess. And so depending on what sort of healing you feel like you need, you take accordingly. As a default, you want Glimmer because you want that tank healing. Paladin, generally not the best tank healer, and having additional tank healing will help you be able to just do your rotation and not have to worry about the tank as much. If you have the need for a little bit more group healing, you'll see some Paladins run Beacon of Faith. This is good if, again, you want a little bit more group healing, or maybe you just have the one zoo animal in your group that just takes twice as much damage as everyone else, and that zoo animal might be you. And, this is a great opportunity for Beacon of Faith. Beacon of Virtue, you have to be careful because now you're not getting any tank beacon. So you're losing a lot of tank healing when you run Beacon of Virtue. This should only be used in sort of like emergencies if you're really, really struggling with the AoE healing. Examples might be, let's say you're really under geared, but you're playing with a really good tank who's helping you, then you can just run Virtue because he'll be fine. Or maybe it's a really tough AoE week, like Bursting or Grievous or something like that, and you're really struggling and you need some more AoE healing. But generally you should avoid Virtue because you're going to be hurting your tank by running that. So now let's talk about the rotation. So the plan is basically you just want to be using Holy Shock and Word of Glory as much as possible to do your main healing, and then otherwise just spamming all your DPS abilities. So on single target, Consecrate is not very important, and you're mainly just worried about using your Judgment on cooldown, using your Crusader Strike, using your Holy Shock. If there's nothing else to do, then you can press your Consecrate, and usually you can still keep Consecrate up on single target. I just want to stress that it's not super important. However, on AoE, Consecrate becomes very, very valuable because it is just, it's hitting every single target, and it ends up being a lot of your damage. So on AoE, this is something where you may want to run in the very first button you press is Consecrate, and do your best to just constantly refresh it every time you can. This will be a pretty big damage increase, especially if you're not used to playing Paladin, you're not used to keeping that Consecrate up. That'll be one of your biggest damage sources. As for what you spend your holy power on, you have 3 choices, right? You have Word of Glory, you have Light of Dawn, and you have Shield of the Righteous. On AoE, if you don't need healing, using Shield of the Righteous is always good. This is because it's uncapped AoE. It hits in a very like small cone kind of thing, but if there's a bunch of mobs stacked up on the tank, you can actually blast and do a lot of damage with that Shield of the Righteous. Even, you know, especially during Holy Avenger, let's say you pop it and then you're okay and you're just trying to do damage. And again, during Wings, that'll help your damage with Shield of the Righteous as well. On single target, using Shield of the Righteous isn't as good, and you'd usually just want to spam just healing abilities to proc Wings. Even at full health, it's probably better to heal and proc the Wings. I would say, you know, technically, I think Shield of the Righteous is slightly higher, but if you always just wanted to spam trying to get a Wings proc on single target, I think that's fine. Usually I try and look for any excuse to proc Wings, but like let's say the mob is about to die or whatever, if it's an execute, then usually I'll just use Shield of the Righteous. So then it's Word of Glory or Light of Dawn. Almost always you'd rather spot heal with Word of Glory rather than use Light of Dawn. This is because Light of Dawn's range is very small, and on top of that, it doesn't really do that much more healing than WoG does. In order to make Light of Dawn worth it, you basically need to hit your whole team, and it needs to be worth healing, right? Like, let's say a mage is in Alter Time, or your tank is at full HP, or someone, right? You're just losing tons of value off that Light of Dawn. So almost always, unless you have a good reason to use Light of Dawn, just be spamming WoG. And, you know, as a paladin, it's very important to see who's in danger and prioritize that on your party. And, you know, that's an important skill to have. So generally just be using WoG. Although, let's say everyone's like at, you know, 95% health or something like that, and you're just trying to proc the Wings, I think using just spamming Light of Dawn is fine there. You'll see me use it sometimes. Ultimately, you know, if it doesn't matter, then you can use Light of Dawn. But try and prioritize WoG. Now let's talk about cooldowns. So during Wings, it's pretty simple to heal, right? You get that huge crit and healing buff. You can do big healing. During Ashen, it's pretty straightforward to heal, right? You just have healing on everybody. The key is healing in between those, right? And the key to healing in between those is using all of your small cooldowns effectively. So all the things that we have, right? We have any unused trinkets. We have Bop, Sack, Aura Mastery with Devo, Bubble, and Lay on Hands. All of those abilities are so good, and the key to staying alive is using them effectively. So, as a general habit, let's say, you know, this is a really scary area we're walking into, right? And, oh no, I wasted my wings or whatever, I don't have wings. As I'm walking into the next pull, I'm sort of taking count of what I have here. I'm saying, okay, I have Sack, I have Bubble, and I have Lay on Hands, right? And a lot of times Sack and Bubble can be used in tandem with each other to reduce damage. So for example, let's say either your tank is getting blasted really hard, or if it's just group damage, and maybe someone on your team is like a squishy cloth guy, or they're just taking a lot of damage, using Sack on them and then bubbling yourself is going to reduce a ton of that group damage. And you know, then it'll focus it to 3 people, right? Well, let's say you have Beacon on 1 guy or 2 guys, you know, then you're really only spot healing 1 or 2 people. And that's how you essentially have that. That's how you counteract that I don't have wings emergency. So every time you go into a pull, you think it might be scary, you know, think about ahead of time what you have, right? Because in an emergency, when your brain's panicking and you don't know what's going on, it's really hard to think like, okay, my sack's almost up, like, I have Lay on Hands, okay, Bubble, you know, like, but if you go into this pool and you're like, okay, as soon as bad stuff happens, I'm gonna sack Bubble, and then that's my first line of defense, and then if I fall behind, then I'm gonna use Lay on Hands, right? If you go into the pool with that plan, your reactions are gonna be so much faster, and the key is to prevent the damage, right? Bubble, Sack, and Devo, and Bop all only prevent damage. They don't push the health bar back up. So being proactive with those abilities is key here. Again, you're defensive too. Divine Protection. It's a 42-second cooldown. Just slam that thing. Anytime you think you're going to take any damage, just slam that thing. It's not on the global. It comes back whenever you need it. Just keep pressing this button. It's so good. And you also have some good utility as well. Your 2 most important utilities in Mythic Plus are going to be Blinding Light, if talented, and Hajj. This is because you can stop really important casts with this, you know, specifically casts where maybe your team doesn't feel like interrupting, but you're going to die if it gets off. So what I'll do a lot of the times, let's say I'm walking into a pull, right, and this one guy has a cast that's really important. I'll set this guy in focus, and I have a focus target Hajj bound, and while I'm DPSing, I'm doing whatever, I'm watching this out of the corner of my eye, and I'm seeing if it starts a cast that the DPS doesn't interrupt, and I'll go bam, and I'll Hajj it, right? Even if I don't even have it selected, that's a very important thing to do. There's lots of situations where that's useful. Halls of Atonement, some of the trash pulls with like Loyal Beasts or the casts, really, really important. Another thing I'll do is Blinding Light, again, right? So I notice, I use my Hajj, I don't have it. Now I have Blinding Light. You don't even need to have the mob targeted, right? Just bam, Blinding Light. It stops everything. You don't need to worry about the stun duration. You're only using it as a temporary stop. So that's damage reduction, damage protection. And all that stuff combined, right? When you go into a pull and you think, oh man, that was impossible to heal without wings, or, oh, my team pulled too big, it's their fault, bad tank or whatever, right? Well, if you went into the pull and you're like, okay, this guy's gonna get a cast off, you Hajj that cast, like, you realize your tank is about to get hurt, you throw sack on him, you bubble yourself, like, all these things you can do to prevent damage. And when you watch the best hpals in the world, when you watch Ellismere, when you watch Smok, when you watch Zalia, they're slamming out those abilities. They don't even hesitate before they use one of those, because they know they're going to need to think quick and act quick if they want to survive without their big cooldowns. So that pretty much covers all of my what I have to say about Paladin. Hopefully this helped you understand, what was expected of you, what choices you should make. I tried to cover a lot of the common questions. Keep in mind this is the first week of the patch. We're still learning, and hopefully in future videos I will revisit and talk about some of these things if there are updates or good stuff from the raid. If you guys have any questions or other tips or just important stuff, feel free to leave those in the comments, and I may pin a comment as well if I think there's some updates or some important stuff that I want to talk about. So, as always, thanks for watching, and a happy keying, friends.
So, what is this face check app for League everyone is talking about? You can get the top meta builds with one single click. And know everyone's playstyle before the match starts. Everyone else is using face check. What about you?
Hello friends, this is Growl. I get asked on my stream often about different parts of my UI, so I wanted to compile a video about the most frequently asked "what is this" questions, and also help with some of the common troubleshooting problems when setting up. This is going to be an intermediate level guide. I'm not going to go over in detail how to install or set up basic add-ons, as there's already plenty of videos for that. I'm going to assume you have a basic understanding already of World of Warcraft UI setup and are looking to incorporate different parts of my UI into yours. Before I begin, I want to mention something very important. If you want to succeed playing this game, especially as a healer, you need to have a good working understanding of your UI. You don't need to know the ins and outs of every setting, but you should be able to make small changes or add or remove spells from your frames or weak auras to help your visibility. Just because I'm a high-rated healer, if you copy my UI, that doesn't make you a high-rated healer, but watching my videos might. If you're installing any of these add-ons for the first time, like Weak Auras or Voodoo, be sure to play around with them a little bit. Go check out a video or a guide to learn how to use them. It's going to be a nightmare for you down the line if you just copy exactly what I have without knowing how to use them, and then a patch comes out that breaks something or an ability changes, or you simply just want to customize something. Now that I got that out of the way, let's get started. So the first thing I get asked about on my UI a lot is my Weak Auras in the middle of my screen. It's just a nice way to show skills that takes up a little bit less space. I have a link for my Weak Aura package in the description. It was not originally made by me, but I've modified it a little bit. If you open up your weak aura menu, you just go to new aura and import and paste that mess in there, and then bam, it's working. Should be easy plug and play. The next thing that I want to talk about is my voodoo frames. They're going to be a little bit tougher to copy, but there'll only be a few things that you need to do. For voodoo, I'll have a link for that in the description as well. You simply just go to tools and import it in here. After that, you may want to set up your mouse over macros. If you haven't used voodoo before, I don't think these come with profiles. I think these are separate for each user. You go to spells and then mouse and keys local, and this is where you can put in any spells that you want to use mouse over macros for. If you're already using this for in the in-game macro window, then you don't have to do this, but I find this a little bit easier. The next thing I want to talk about is bouquets. I'm going to pull up a video to help explain it since I'm not in a group right now. If you see the way that hots and spells are displayed on my frames, I have a lot of them. And I often get asked, how do you show this or how do you show that? You can generally do this on any frame add-on. This is just how I do it in Voodoo. So don't think that you have to change your frame add-on just to get this working. You may just have to figure out how to do it in yours. So there's two different ways that Voodoo shows buffs or like cooldowns or whatever. The first is just listing them one by one. So for example, my rejuve, my regrowth, and my life bloom are all listed all the time, and nothing will ever be shown in that slot except for those three. The next thing is what's called bouquets. A bouquet in terms of Voodoo is just multiple hots or buffs that are on the same slot so that it doesn't clutter your screen. It'll only show the one with the highest priority that you set up. I use both individual hots and bouquets for setting up my UI. And for whatever reason, bouquets need to be imported separately from UI. So if you're just importing my profile, you may not see this stuff, especially the rows on the end of the party frames. So to get that set up, you open up your Voodoo options, you go to General, and then bouquets, and this is the list of all of them. There's a few in there by default, but I have all mine set up manually. The links are in the description of the Voodoo profile link. There should be 4 of them. All you need to do is go to import and paste in that mess, and then bam, you have them. If they're still not working, you go to panels, hot icons, and this is the list of everything that's shown. You can change how it's displayed on yours. This is just how it is on mine. So you can see for the first 3 is just hots, and then the 4 through 7 are bouquets that I have set up. Make sure that you click the drop down and you have the bouquet selected after you've imported it. If you ever want to see what's in there or change the order, you simply just go to edit. It opens up this other window again. You can see this is just a small one that I have set up with a few less common hots. For instance, grove tending, Cenarian Ward, cultivation, and wild growth are all on one spot. And that should be it with Voodoo. After setting up your bouquets and your mouse over macros, you should be good to go. But there are a few other things that people ask about my frames. Again, we'll go back to this this clip that I have. The one thing is the party cooldowns on the left side. This is a weak aura, not a function of Voodoo. So you can do this with any party frame that you use. I'll have a link for this in the description. Be sure to read through the link in the description, and you may need to read through comments if this isn't working for you, because there may be certain dependencies or certain settings that you have to enable. Another common setup is when you import it, it doesn't automatically import in dungeons, so be sure to check the loading conditions of the weak aura to see that it's loading where you want it to. For example, mine, if you open my game back up, doesn't load in town. It only loads when I'm in a dungeon, so you won't be able to see it just sitting around in town. The other one, which is almost identical to that one, is the targeted party spells. This puts a little icon in the middle of their party frame when they're being targeted by an ability. Hopefully when we fight this blob, you'll be able to see that. So you can see right here in the middle of my frame, you see that little icon that shows that the tentacle is targeting me with Mind Flay. This, again, is a weak aura, and you can do this with any add-on. It's not a function of Voodoo. You just simply copy the weak aura that's in the description, and that will get working for you. Again, it may have certain dependencies that you need to install if you don't have that already. Next, I want to talk about my nameplates. I use an add-on called KUI nameplates. I don't have too much customization on it. It's mostly just standard. I'm sure there are lots of other people with good nameplate profiles. Again, you could use Plater or LVUI nameplates. Anything that you use is fine. This is just what I use. One thing that I get asked a lot about is I don't show party health bars in dungeons. You can see on my clip here, you can see my party members, but it doesn't show their health bars. This is, again, you can do this with any nameplate add-on, or even I think with base UI. This is just how I do it. In KUI, you go to the CVers tab. You may need to check this box. This is just enabling advanced options, if you will. And then there's a checkbox that says high default health bar. You can see it requires a reload. And so you can play around with this to get the health bar hidden so that you can still see the nameplates on your allies without having to see the health bar. Since you're a healer, you should be looking at that anyway. Next, we'll talk about OPI, or OPI. This is an add-on that I use for my potions. It simply allows you to bind a lot of spells to one button, and then it gives you a circle, and then you can move your mouse in a direction to activate it. I really only use this for potions because I use, let's say, 7 or 8 or even 9 different potions in a dungeon, and I think it's a waste to use hotkeys for every single one of them. You can use this for lots of cosmetic things too, like mounts or whatever, or maybe food buffs or scrolls. A lot of people see this and they're like, man, what is that? Is that a weak aura or something? So this is actually an add-on called OPIE. O-P-I-E. The next one that gets asked a lot, I'll go back on my dungeon run, is the spells on the left side of the party window. This is not a function of Voodoo. This is actually a separate add-on. I mainly just use this for review. My brain is certainly not big enough to be watching these spells on the left of my screen, knowing what all my teammates are casting. The add-on is called Trophy GCD, and along with OP, I'll have all the names in the description if you want to get the exact spelling of everything. Also, Trophy GCD is this little window here on the top of mine that shows mine. All of these scrolling ability displays by each frame is Trophy GCD. I generally only use this for review so I can see what's going on after when watching it. I almost never look at any of this while I'm in a run. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is my timer add-on. I don't use the default dungeon timer. Not that it does much, but I just like the way this one looks a little bit better. It's called Mythic Plus Timer, all one word. And if you like the way this looks, you can just download that on. I don't think I did any configuring for it, and it'll look like that for you too. Another common timer add-on that people use is called Gotta Go Fast, so maybe you could try that one if you wanted to see how that one looks as well. That's it. That mostly covers the frequently asked questions about my UI. Hopefully, if you were having problems with voodoo bouquets or the targeted spells weak auras, I answered your questions enough to get it set up for you. If you have any more questions or anything else that you see on my screen, feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll try and get to them when I can. Happy keying, friends. Called Gotta Go Fast, so maybe you could try that one if you wanted a bit better. I generally only use this for review so I can see what's going on after when watching it. I almost never look at any of this while I'm in a run. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is my timer add-on. I don't use the default dungeon timer. Not that it does much, but I just like the way this one looks a little bit better. It's called Mythic Plus Timer, all one word. And if you like the way this looks, you can just download that on. I don't think I did any configuring for it, and it'll look like that for you too. Another common timer add-on that people use is called Gotta Go Fast, so maybe you could try that one if you wanted to see how that one looks as well. That's it. That mostly covers the frequently asked questions about my UI. Hopefully, if you were having problems with voodoo bouquets or the targeted spells weak auras, I answered your questions enough to get it set up for you. If you have any more questions or anything else that you see on my screen, feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll try and get to them when I can. Happy keying, friends.
Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we'll be looking at my healer UI setup, or at least how to set up a UI as a new healer in terms of... Hello guys, welcome to my new video, and I'm going to be doing an advanced look at Grid 2. I made a video about this a while ago and I got so many questions about advanced look at this add-on for healers because it's just really great, really customizable. And before you watch this video, I highly advise you to get caught up on where I am from the first video, because we'll be using the profile basically from where we left off. So if you follow the two videos, you should have a good understanding on how to set up Grid 2 and how to heal with things like mouse over macros or click, and we might look at some of the useful macros at the end of the video as well. So this video is going to be looking at advanced look, specifically at things like raid debuffs. I know a lot of people are scared about Castle Nachi and which debuff. How do I show them?
Yeah, I don't like that. Showing one. We're gonna get rid of that. Fucking hell. Yeah, I ain't here no. I'm close.
Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age.
How to kick. Oh, my phone just died.
Do I smell pizza?
Yeah, dude.
For better or worse, the internet brings people together from distant corners of the world and has information on every conceivable topic. And of course, that includes porn. There's some debate about how much of the internet is actually pornographic content, but if you look for it, you'll find it. So, how does it affect people's brains, attitudes, and behaviors? The short answer is, it's complicated and there's a lot we don't know, but we have studied some of the risks and yes, even possible benefits of watching pornography. So you know, some of these studies talk about disturbing behaviors like sexual violence and rape, just in case you would like to avoid those things. Most research on pornography is correlational. There aren't volunteers who get randomly assigned to watch a bunch of explicit videos to see what happens to their brains. Instead, lots of studies involve surveys asking people about their behaviors and traits in addition to how much porn they watch. On top of that, everyone who participates needs to consent to being in a study about pornography, which might mean some people self-select out of this. All that to say, we can't be sure if these findings apply to everyone or even most people, but they're a start. Some research has found that watching a lot of pornography might reflect differences in people's brains, especially in a part called the striatum. The striatum is involved in reward processing and consistently gets activated during sexual arousal, among other regions. Sexual arousal is a workout for a lot of your brain. 2 MRI studies tested about 70 male participants by showing them sexy pictures, and the men who felt their pornography use was addictive or problematic had more activity in the ventral striatum compared to those who didn't. Another study found that how much porn men watched was negatively correlated with the size of a part of
Are you a new or returning PC builder who's confused about the current PC parts market in 2021? Maybe you're not sure what CPU and motherboard combos go together. Or maybe you're still trying to understand how to get the features that you want out of your PC build. In this PC Parts Explained 2021 edition, we're going to go over PC parts for beginners and returning builders, including both AMD and Intel platforms. From the best gaming PC Parts Explained 2021 to the best video editing PC Parts Explained, we're going to get you what you need, and that's coming right up. Hi, welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. I am really excited about this video because it's been a long time coming. Now, if you're new to the channel, you might not know that we've done deep dive videos on a number of PC parts, including best RAM, best CPUs, best motherboards, best coolers, and more. And of course, I'm going to put a link up in the card to the entire series right there. Today, we're bringing it all together in a compact Best PC Parts Explained 2021 edition. This video is going to give you a broad overview of what each PC component is, what to think about when buying it, and how it all connects together. Of course, that's what this channel is all about. It's about getting you the best price to performance in your PC. If you get value out of this video, give it a like to support the channel. And of course, subscribe and click the bell icon to get notified of new content. With that, let's jump into it. We're going to kick off our PC Parts Explained for beginners with one of the most important decisions you're going to make. And that is the Central Processing Unit, or CPU. Now, there's two major CPU makers, AMD and Intel. And they make a variety of CPUs, but we're just focusing on the consumer desktop CPUs today. I want to highlight my recent Best CPU for Gaming 2021 video, where I go into everything in a lot more detail, and I'll put a link to that down in the description and up in the card right there. The CPU connects into the motherboard and is the brain of the computer. But the CPU itself has more than one brain it can use at a time. Those are called cores. Most modern processors are at least 4 cores, and they come in 6, 8, 10, 12, and 16 core versions. The more cores, the more the CPU can do at once. Though some tasks like gaming only need between 4 and 8 cores, depending on the game and how powerful the CPU is. Now, with all the current Intel Core and AMD Ryzen processors like this one here, each of the CPU cores can do 2 tasks simultaneously, and we call this multi-threading. So when I say the Ryzen 5600X has 6 cores and 12 threads, that means it has 6 cores that can each do roughly 2 things at the same time. Some CPUs come with integrated graphics, like all of the Intel CPUs that do not have an F in the name, and AMD CPUs that have a G in their name, like the Ryzen 3400G. However, most of the uses for the integrated graphics are just for people who do mostly office tasks, and if you're gaming or doing video editing type of work, you're going to use a dedicated graphics card. Now, some of the AMD CPUs that are still relevant include most of the recently launched Ryzen 5000 lineup, the preceding Ryzen 3000 lineup. For Intel, their most recent CPUs include the 11th generation CPUs like the i5 11400 and 10th generation CPUs like the 10400. I'll leave a list below of the ones that I would consider and include links to the relevant retailers that you can purchase them at. All AMD CPUs are unlocked, meaning you can overclock them if you want to, and also overclock the memory with them. Intel CPUs are different. Only the ones labeled with a K in the name can get overclocked, and only on compatible Z-series motherboards. More on that later. But none of the other Intel CPUs can be overclocked. However, the memory can be overclocked on compatible Z-series motherboards or B560 or H510 series boards with any of the 10th or 11th generation CPUs. Next up on our PC Parts Explained 2021, we have the graphics card, or GPU. Now, currently as I'm filming this, there's an ongoing shortage of GPUs, and if you want to learn more, I'll leave a link to a video explaining what the heck is going on graphics card shortages. Now, a dedicated graphics card plugs into the motherboard, and you use the outputs on the back of the card rather than the motherboard itself to get the video signal. Graphics cards are primarily made by AMD and NVIDIA. However, Intel is going to launch its own lineup of graphics cards likely at the end of 2021. As it stands now, AMD and NVIDIA are both excellent gaming graphics cards, but NVIDIA is still better if you need productivity features like video encoding for video editing work, although AMD is catching up. How powerful a graphics card you have and the types of games you play will determine what kind of monitor resolution you can use and how many frames per second, called FPS, you can get, along with the type of monitor you buy. I go over a lot more in my Best Gaming Monitors 2021 guide, so I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. In a normal GPU market, the GPU is typically the easiest but most expensive component to upgrade in the future, as it just requires taking out the old one and putting a new one in, though you may need a slightly larger power supply if you jump way up in overall GPU power with your upgrade. So what is the right CPU and GPU combo for you? Well, it depends on what you're doing. Now for gaming, you're going to want to buy the best GPU that you can buy, and a CPU that's not going to bottleneck the GPU or the game. If doing video or photo editing work, you're going to want a reasonably fast CPU with more cores and at least something like an NVIDIA GTX 1650 Super graphics card or better. Now the best thing to do is to make a list of the programs you use and see what the recommended specs are for those programs. Now I go over these concepts in more detail in my Best CPU for Gaming 2021 video, which again is linked down in the description. That leads our PC Parts Explained to motherboards. Now I did a Best Motherboards for Ryzen 5000 video that does a deep dive into motherboard features, and of course I'm going to put it in the link down in the video description below. The motherboard is the thing that all components plug into, and it allows them to talk to each other and frankly everything to just work. Motherboards are specific both to the brand, so AMD has motherboards that only work with its CPUs, and Intel motherboards only work with Intel CPUs. And the motherboards themselves use something called a chipset, most of which are only compatible with certain CPU series. So for instance, a Z590 motherboard is an Intel chipset motherboard that will only work with 10th and 11th generation Intel processors. And an X570 motherboard is an AMD chipset motherboard that will only work with Ryzen 3000 and 5000 CPUs. I'll leave a list of motherboard chipsets and with which CPU lineups they're compatible with and links down in the video description. Now there are 3 common motherboard sizes. There's a full-size ATX, a half-size version called a micro ATX or MATX motherboard, and a very small version called an ITX motherboard. On the back of the motherboard, there's going to be USB ports of varying speeds, audio output for the onboard sound, wired and wireless networking if it's not there, and display outputs if you're not using a dedicated GPU. Now motherboards also have either 2 or 4 slots for RAM, SATA connections for the SATA storage drives, and at least 1 slot for the M.2, and connections for system fans, RGB, front PC case USB, and audio ports. Now the motherboard of course has an onboard operating system called BIOS, which allows you to change the way the motherboard, memory, or other components run. One of the most important motherboard features is the power delivery on the motherboard, called the VRMs, a little half square right here around the CPU, which often have a heatsink like this one right here, to avoid overheating under heavy use. You need to pay close attention to these if using an 8-core or greater CPU. Then of course there are the PCIe Express slots, also called the PCIe slots. Now the top one right here is an x 16 slot, and it's for the graphics card. They vary in size depending on how much bandwidth they have. Note that smaller add-in cards can be used in the larger slots. Now most motherboards use what's called PCIe 4.0 speed. However, most users will currently not benefit from the extra speed, so I wouldn't fret that much using a motherboard that only has PCIe 3.0. All this and more in the motherboard video link in the description. RAM, also called memory, is what the system uses to temporarily store information it's using immediately. Now, I did a whole video.
Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a
Guys, welcome back to Just In Tech Tips. Today we've got another amazing mini saber unboxing of the all-new Alienware M15 R6 gaming laptop. We're also going to be setting it up and taking a look at the internals and giving you a sneak peek of some gameplay. This is the i7-11800H 8-core processor with 4.6 GHz with turbo boost, with an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3070 graphics card with 8 GB of GDDR6 video RAM. It's got a 15-inch QHD 1440p display with a 240Hz refresh rate with G-Sync and Advanced Optimus. We also got 16 GB of 3200 MHz DDR4 RAM, but we're going to take a look at the inside and see if we got the slower version or the faster version of that RAM. Now let's cut this open like a high-tech piece of delicious cheesecake. Alright, let's take it out of the shipping box. And here we got the right side of the box, flexing on their new Cryotech cooling technology. And this is the left side of the box, the simple M15 right there. And as usual, Alienware showing off their cool reflective designs on the sides. And then on the front of the box, it looks like we just got a nice simple Alienware logo. Very minimal, but honestly I think it adds a pretty nice first impressions touch. Alright, let's open it up. And now let's take the static blanket off. Don't be shy. Beautiful. Alright, we'll take a look at that in a sec, but first we're going to check out our accessories. We chose the slimmed down version of the 240 watt power brick. It's only a $20 upgrade to get this slimmed down version, and when comparing to the larger version, I'd say it's definitely worth it. Just look how much more massive that is. That's a huge difference. Put that to the side for when we open it up. Put the power cable to the side. Alright, now for the main event, we'll pull on this tab to lift this up. Take off the plastic, my favorite part. Gotta love that dark side of the moon. That looks sleek. It's a very nice graphite looking matte black material. It's got some good weight to it. Quite a bit heavier than it looks. We've got the glossy stenciled M15 logo right there. It's thin, but definitely not Alienware's thinnest laptop. You got the typical hexagon air intakes on the bottom, and then long nubs right here in order to create enough of a gap underneath to allow for some airflow. Alright, before we take a look at the ports, let's see what else is in the box. You got your warranty information, your thank you for joining us information, and then some more information on your ports and connectivity. Alright, let's put this beautiful box away and take a look at the actual computer itself. As far as ports go, on the right side we've got exhaust ventilation, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, this one with power share technology, and then on the left side we've got more exhaust ventilation, an RJ45 Ethernet port, and a headphone and microphone jack. And then on the back we've got a Thunderbolt 4 port with power delivery, or a USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 display port, a USB-A 3.2 Gen 1 port, an HDMI port, got your function escape locking. So the Alienware Command Center is pretty similar to the other Alienware machines that I've reviewed. You've got your per key RGB lighting effects and animations on the FX tab, and your CPU and GPU monitoring, thermal profiles, and audio presets in Fusion. But one thing that I was ripping my hair out trying to figure out on the Home tab was where were the CPU overclock settings? settings. Finally, I found out through Dell support that the new M15 and M17's overclocking is actually controlled by the thermal profiles. So overall first impressions, I really like this mechanical keyboard. The touchpad is a little small for my taste, but we'll see in my full review if it's something that I can get used to. Design-wise, this thing is beautiful, and quality of materials are pretty top-notch as well. We're about to show you a sneak peek of some gameplay, but make sure to tune in next week for our live benchmarks as well as our full review, where we're going to be breaking down every single thing that you're going to need to know before purchasing this laptop. I'd like to personally thank Jonathan Preston, our latest Platinum member, for his monthly commitment to support this channel. Guys, remember every week I do a giveaway that randomly selects someone who's interacted with this channel, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with notifications turned on, and keep an eye out for that each week, as well as staying up to date with all of the latest gaming PCs. Now, before I announce today's winner, if you're going to be